We come in, we can't land, but we don't need to really do a hoist. We just can hover down low enough. They're going to lift the wounded guy up, and a crew chief and medic will be on the skids, and they'll pick him up and put him in. I'm Peter Pilot. I'm a new guy. Never have done this before. And I'm sitting there. I'm hovering at about 12, 15 feet. And I notice out of the trees are just lit up like Christmas trees. Just flashes everywhere. And these red things come out, tracers, and then all of a sudden, bam, bam, something hit the back of my helmet. And I look over at my aircraft commander, and he's slumped in the seat.
Ask a Vet is dedicated to documenting and preserving veteran stories in their own words on their own terms before their stories are gone forever. Each episode is an unfiltered conversation about who they were before service during war and their adjustment to coming home. If you believe these stories matter, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Your support helps us preserve the voices of those who served. Ask a Vet is proud to partner with Utah Honor Flight, part of the National Honor Flight Network, giving veterans the trip of a lifetime to Washington, D.C. to visit the memorials built in their honor. Every flight is free to veterans and made possible by generous donors. To learn more or support the mission, visit utahhonorflight.org or find your local hub at honorflight.org. And now back to the show.
Okay, my name is Thomas Hall. I grew up in a pretty typical middle-class family. Both parents worked. Graduated from high school in Port Wayne Navy, California, but I'd been to school in a number of places. My dad was in the Navy, and we moved just back and forth from coast to coast. I graduated in 66, started junior college in 67, and was through my first year, and I had registered for the draft as you were required to do. In my first year in after school, I was actually in my second year when I got a letter from a draft board, which is a local county draft board, saying that my 2S at student deferment had been canceled because they were not making their quotas for the state. They had to get so many bodies in, and they were not making them. So they were reducing the number of 2S deferments, and mine happened to be one of them. And they said, then I got a notice a couple of days later. I had to go down and take a physical, which I did. And then about 2 weeks later, I got a draft notice.
Wow.
That I was being drafted into the military. And I had decided before that I was looking at other options because I knew there was kind of the overlay of what was happening. And I thought, I'd always wanted to fly jets. We were raised on military bases that had jets always. Loved that. And thought I would go do that with the Navy, try to do that with the Navy. So I entered their program or tried to enter their program. And I got accepted to Auburn, but then my draft notice came. That happened actually before my draft notice came. And then I scrambled and found that I could actually join the Army's flight program without really too much of a hassle. Although I take a test, the test was less than difficult. It was a military test, and if you ever taken military tests, they're geared towards the lower end of normal. Anyway, I took I took the test, and it's really just like pictures after picture of different positions, looking out a window, and what attitude your aircraft is in. That's all it was. It was like, okay, zip through that because it seemed natural to me looking out a window like that. I don't know. I think my wife would have severe problems with that. She can't read a map. And it was all very plain to me. That's just the way I see things. Anyway, I got my draft notice and went in, and I signed up for the Army flight program if they could get me in time before they arrested me for draft evasion. And they called me in November of 68. Yeah. No, November 67. They called me. I went down to in the induction center. Lots of protests ongoing at that point in time. It was really interesting. They tried to bar us from entering the building. The protester didn't. No, you're not going to do that. So we just walked by them. No, yeah. Besides, I was a little aggressive, I think, and they probably could see that in my face that I was. I don't know why they were probably trying to help me, save me, but anyway, went in there and I was inducted. Took the oath. They had me doing weird stuff. They had me drawing blood. Okay, from other people when I had taken the oath and I was waiting to be shipped out to Fort Polk, Louisiana. They had me drawing blood from people who I knew. They were like my homies down on the block. They were going in line, and then I'd be sitting there with the needle going, they would go, wait a minute. We know him. No. Anyway, I got shipped out that night. It really hit me that night. What have you done? You can't change this. This is a decision that is just in cement now. Yeah, I was pretty depressed. We flew out late at night and flew to Dallas, Texas, and then got on a Trans-Texas airline, which later became U.S. Air. They flew DC-3s, no pressurization. In my head was ready to explode. They flew us into Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I had my parents had driven through Louisiana, so I just at least understood where it was and kind of what it was about. It was really unimpressive. I mean, sorry about that, Louisiana. New Orleans is okay, but Lake Charles, Louisiana, not so much. It was, well, when I got there, it was really interesting because normally they start in on you immediately. Uniforms and getting your hair cut and doing all that. They weren't ready for us. So they stuck us in a barracks for 2 days until which was the thing I needed. I slept for 2 days. I got up and was like, okay, we can do this. And I was fine after that. Basic training at Fort Polk was pretty miserable. It's a miserable place. And then basic training was just adding misery on top of misery.
What made it miserable?
Oh, the weather was awful. It was December that year, and it was rainy, and it was gross. It was like this out here right now, but it was that way all the time. You this was what I really loved. You had to put on your galoshes, which were these huge overboots over your boots. And I wasn't in good shape. I've been partying a lot before I got there. I played football in high school, but I was in reasonable shape. But it was a chore. Wearing that, a poncho, and carrying an M14 of 5 miles or 2 miles, whatever it was, to the rifle range. It was just miserable. Mm-hmm. Then I got sick the last week. I got an upper respiratory tract infection, which they were running rampant there. And then I went to the hospital for a day, and then they said, well, because you're going to miss your PT exam, you're going to have to start all over and go to the beginning and start again. No, I'll go out there and do it. I was pretty sick. I got better. My friend, who was my colleague when we were basic, he didn't fare so well. He was in the hospital with me. He ran his PT, did it. He was not feeling good. And we got on the bus to go to Fort Walters, Texas for the helicopter flight training. And by the time we got to Dallas, he was almost dead. He had encephalitis.
Oh, wow.
He did die from it.
Wow.
But it was kind of interesting, really, because we got to Fort Walters then after we dropped him off and got him to the hospital. And bacterial encephalitis is highly infectious. So they restricted us to the barracks, but we had already been out all over the base. So we shut down the U.S. helicopter program for 2 weeks while they watched us and watched everybody else to make sure nobody else was dying.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. At the time, we were in barracks at Fort Walters, and this guy comes to visit us. He's a general. 2-star, I think. Youngest general, not General Lee, not General Grant, these old grizzled guys. No, he was young. He was probably in his mid to early 30s. He was really impressive. But anyway, he just came in and talked to us and explained what was going to happen with us and what was going to happen with the people who allowed us to go there, knowing full well somebody had been sick. He was pissed about the impact on the program, which he should have been. Maybe. Anyway, we restricted for a couple weeks, and then other people will probably have told you about basic flight training. It was not as difficult as they thought they made it. It was, you flew for an hour or two a week, or 3 or 4, and you learned how to fly. And we did lots of PT, and just some minor harassment, really.
Oh, so they weren't yelling at you as much there?
Oh, yeah, they were yelling at us, but it was, after going through basic of that, it was kind of like, yeah, okay, we understand what you're saying, we'll do that, or we won't do that. Anyway, it was, I had trouble soloing because I got so tense I couldn't make smooth movements. And so I got recycled, sent back to the next unit that was coming through. And then I recycled in the first 4 weeks of that and ended up not having a real problem. I mean, most of the people who had problems in flight training were not here. We're not at Fort Walters. We're not in basic training. It was when they moved on, and we moved on to Fort Stewart. And other pilots will tell you about moving on to Fort Rucker, Alabama. Fort Stewart was when they had just cranked up because they had the military space and they needed more pilots. They needed to generate more pilots per month.
How many guys were in your program, would you say, that were moving through at the same pace as you?
I'm trying to think about that. Probably 160.
Wow, a lot.
150.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a small unit. There were probably, it was probably close, somewhere between 110 and 160.
Did guys wash out?
Oh, yeah, a lot. That's who started. They wouldn't graduate that many. They could be pretty miserable about how they treated people, and they would decide they didn't like you, and they'd wash you out. If they didn't like your personality, they'd wash you out. Little did I know they were actually saving your lives in many of those cases. But anyway, I was in they were called the Gray Hats at Fort Walters. I'd been sent back to them, and I'd soloed. One story was kind of funny. I guess my face is pretty expressive. And I guess I expressed anger to this TAC officer. Anyway, I was restricted to the barracks, and I cleaned the barracks every weekend while everybody else went out on leave until the AG showed up for an inspection. They were just doing an inspection. I was in there buffing up the floors with tree wax, and he's going like, "What are you doing here?" Buffing up the floors. Why are you here? Isn't everybody on leave? Everybody but me. And he said, why? And I said, oh, you should go talk to him because I don't have any demerits. And I had no demerits on my list. And so he went and talked to the TAC officer. He comes back here and he goes, you're on leave. Get out of here. This won't happen anymore. And I went, okay. And so he's, don't leave the area because, you got a restriction on how far you can travel. Yes, sir, no problem. Got on a plane in Dallas and hit Los Angeles in like whatever it took to get there, and was home in about 3 or 4 hours. They never do it because I got back in time. But I went home and saw my parents, which was really nice.
What did your parents think about you being in the training?
My older brother was in the military until they booted him out during Vietnam. He was in Air Force in Guam, and he drove fuel trucks, and he rolled 2 of them by not behaving himself and not listening to procedures. And so they decided it was less expensive to have him on the outside than on the inside. So they gave him a general discharge. My younger brother went to the Air Force, and that was later. He didn't do very well either. Didn't couldn't deal with the huge amount of bullshit that is every day. Usually. Oof. Well, anyway, I was telling you about earlier about, going to flight school in Savannah. Savannah's really pretty easy. Instrument training was interesting because somehow I took to that. That part was, instrument training was what most people washed out on. Not being able to look outside and not being able to, they have a hard time with that. I did really well on it, I guess because I'm oblivious to a lot of stuff. And anyway,
And are you flying Hueys at this point? Or
yeah, flying Hueys. When we started out in the TH-55 was called. It's a little like a bumblebee. And then by the time we got to Savannah, we were doing Hueys, yeah. UH-1Ds. No, they were probably, 1Ds.
Describe those.
Big helicopter. Well, not really big compared to other helicopters, but it carries 6 to 8 people, other than the crew.
You have some power? Did you feel like that?
Yeah, they had a lot of power, really, but the people complained about it. You'll hear other helicopter products complain about it. Compared to the H model, which came later, they didn't have enough power. You could only hoist 1 or 2 people with the D model on high temperatures. And I'll tell you about hoist missions. But with an H model, you could hoist 6 or 7 of them because it had that much more power. And power is a function of not only what the helicopter could do for you, but what the conditions are around, whether you can lift or not. And the H just was more power, better equipment to work with. And ours were all brand new, so that would really help.
Did you enjoy Savannah then? Take me back there.
I only went out to Savannah one time. Actually, when we went down, I had some friends from my parents lived down on Jekyll Island, which is south of there. And I took a bunch of the crew of people who were associated with in the flight crew down to Savannah, down to this thing. We had a shrimp boil. That was pretty nice. And then we went, I took a couple of them, we got in trouble, took a couple of them to her. They had a lady down in, parents down in South Georgia, had a daughter that went to Emory, which is up in Atlanta, and she invited us to come to a dance at Emory. And so I get a couple of my friends from there, and we're going over there. I'm with this guy. One guy, he drives a Corvette. It's got the 457 in it. It'll blow everything off the road. And he's returning to Vietnam because he had already been there for 4 years and came back and learned how to fly. Now he's going back. And he was more than a little bit out of control. We got in trouble and got kicked out of the dance because he brought alcohol with him. It was a teetotaler event, but it was still funny. I don't think it endeared her parents to me, which was fine too, because they fell out with my parents later. So it didn't matter. Anyway, Savannah we were too busy doing stuff, and there was nothing to go outside. I was fully aware if you go out and get drunk and you get busted for being drunk, you're out of the program. So I did get drunk at a bar there in Savannah and immediately called for a cab and went back to the barracks because I wasn't going to get caught out. Not that anyway, we went to instrument training. I did really well on it. And we got to the final thing. They're doing our last test flight for instruments. And that was really the last one we were going to take. And I never got in the front seat to start with. The guy who was the student, there were 3 students in this plane, in the helicopter. The first guy in there, the TAC officer who was our instructor pilot, said he made a mistake, failed him right off the bat. And he turned around, looked at us, and says, "I'm failing all 3 of you." And that will wash you out of school. And I was freaking livid when we got in. So was the other guy. And we went to talk to the commander, and he goes, "Okay, it's not going to stand, so don't worry about it. You'll be okay." They took the TAC officer off of doing that because he was really trying to save us. He said that later. He said, "You're not going to want to get what you're going to get." Okay, but This isn't the way to do it. Anyway, we got through that, and we're basically done. But you have to have 500 hours of time in training. I had 499 hours and 49 minutes. I'm missing 15 minutes. And they put me together with this guy who was a roommate of mine, and we really didn't get along with very well. He's missing a little bit of time. So most everybody's missing a little bit. You got to have, they're really sticklers for the 500. You can't be this close and not get it. You had to be over the mark. Anyway, we're just doing circles. We're the gunship support for the insertion that is ongoing, that is all fake. It's just people getting their time in. And I flew my 15 minutes. We sat on the ground. He got in the right seat, because that's when flight school, we always flew from the right seat. He got in the right seat, flew it up, and we had a catastrophic tail rotor failure, where the tail rotor, I don't know if you've seen a Huey, it stretches along, the drive shaft stretches along the tail boom, and then up and then out, it drives the rotor. It's about 140 pounds. It blew off the ship because it froze. And the ship nosed down and started to spin. And he did everything you weren't supposed to do. He pulled all the airspeed out of it. He zeroed out the airspeed. And I'm trying to beat him off the controls at the time. And then he pulls in more power, which makes you spin faster. And we were falling backwards like this. And I was going like, no, we'll die if we hit like that. And I took the controls from him and bent it over enough that instead of going like this, we hit the ground going forward with a slight rotation. It hit and rotated through this field, blew the helicopter all apart. I crawled out. I still see I didn't have my helmet strap. And in the helicopter, the two pilots have inertia reels on them, which means if you hit something suddenly and you're still accelerating, it will stop you. So we hit the ground and it hit and started to spin, and I went through the windshield. My helmet went through first. I went through second, and I came so close. I could see these minute pebbles. I still see them in my sleep sometimes. Of the ground. I was like, that close, and it snapped and pulled me back into the ship. So I think hitting the ground would have been not a pleasant affair. I crawled away from the ship, and then I looked back, and he's just hanging in his seat. I crawled back over there because it's starting to burn now. And I crawled back over there and drug his ass out. I should not have done that. I should have, but that story goes on. He goes to Vietnam, and he does some things that result in deaths of a lot of people. Just not being a good pilot, just being a bad pilot, making bad decisions. And he died with just out in Tonkin Gulf. He was going to land on a ship. Had a bunch of people he was ferrying out there. When you land on a ship, you come from the top. You don't come from the sides. Ship rolled when he was right there landing. He hit the side of the ship, right into the South Pacific, never to be seen again. But anyway, that was him. Anyway, after that happened, I had a severe concussion. They had been in the hospital at Stewart, which is the base that was there, Hunter Army Airfield, Fort Stewart. We had to go out for another check ride, which really pissed me off. But they had an accident investigation board. They came in and we talked, and I explained to them what I remember happening. And they explained, they told me that they had a complaint from the FAA about the language that was used over the emergency frequency.
Are you kidding?
No, because I was telling him to get the fuck off the controls, and I was beating on him and calling him names, and they just laughed about it. They chuckled about it. And they said, yeah, we understand that. We did our check rides.
Let me back up. Were you skittish to get back in a copter after that?
No, I was 19 or 20. Excuse me, I was 20, and no.
Wow.
20-year-olds don't get skittish like that. They don't get scared.
Okay.
They should, but they don't. No. Then I told you the story earlier about at the end of flight school when we're getting ready to get out of Dodge. You're picking out where you think you want to go. And the Army will then tell you where you're going to go, but you get the choice. First, as I was telling you, there was like 3 tables there of different opportunities in different places, all Vietnam, but different units doing different things. In different schools, you could go to maintenance school and Chinook school and things like that. And I'm looking over this other table, and there's this guy sitting there, an MSC, Medical Service Corps officer, sitting there just kind of looking around, feeling his fingers. I'm going, feeling his thumbs. I'm going like, what are you doing here? What do you do? And he explained to me that he did Medevacs. And I said, well, that sounds pretty cool. He said, but nobody wants to do this because you can't shoot anybody. There are no guns. Nobody wants to do it. No guns means I'm basically flipping off the war. I'd do that. So I really did give it some thought. And I said, no, this is kind of what I like to do. Besides that, they'll send me to San Antonio for a couple of weeks. And that'll be fun too. And so I went home. Hung around for, well, I didn't tell you this story, but I went home during basic. What happens when we got to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and we were there for 3 weeks. It was Christmas vacation. Everybody was leaving. So they sent us home too. So I go home. I pull in the driveway. I go home and I don't pull in because I was not driving anything. I get in and I'm going out to get in my little brother's car. And boom, like 5 cop cars on me. And they're going like, evading the draft. You're being arrested. Felony. And I'm going like, well, look at me, people. I've got no hair. I'm emaciated. Where do you think I've been? I just said, hey, I think I got a set of orders in my back pocket. Doesn't matter. Got to arrest you. So they took me down to the police station. The police station, the chief of police is a friend of my dad's. They golf together. And he's just kind of going like, I can't believe I have to deal with this. The guy's got a set of orders. He looks like he's been through hell. Leave him alone, but it was kind of humorous.
That's crazy.
It was humorous. I was humored by it. At first I was a little pissed by it, but then I was going like, if you think about it, just look at me. Any normal human being look like this? No. Anyway, going back to I came home from flight school. It was a good month. Christmas, fun. Going off to San Antonio, get to San Antonio. Haven't been paid. Haven't been paid since November. And we get there to San Antonio. I figured I could go in and get paid because we're not going to get paid before we get to Vietnam if we don't. And it's pretty harsh trying to live with no money, even if you're on base. Anyway, get all ticked off because they won't pay us. So I go to the payroll office with a bunch of other guys, and I'm kind of ranting and raving and yelling and screaming. This older gentleman, probably in his 50s, 60s, comes walking in the door, and everybody's snapping to attention. Kind of fun to watch. It's like dominoes. This person went over there, they snap in place. Military people probably get pissed off if you describe it like that, but it was. And I turn around, and he said, "Sonny, you're having a problem here." I explained to him. I said, "We haven't been paid since November. It's December, and it's, we're not going to get paid before we go to Vietnam." And he just went in and said, "No, that's not going to happen. You pay these guys. You pay them now." So we got paid. It was kind of cool. I saw him later in the reception line. He was very, very magnanimous, very nice. Generals, most of them I found, except for one Patton, were really nice. They've reached the pinnacle, or they had a pathway to the pinnacle if they hadn't reached their pinnacle yet. And they usually are much mellower than colonels and majors. By the time you get to captain, they're getting a little crazy. By the time they're lieutenants, they're really more targets and sandbags than really officer leaders. That's not true. But that's the way you kind of see them. Lieutenants were a pain in the ass because they were all new, young. And captains, they've been experienced, most of them. By the time you get to lieutenant, though, lieutenant colonel, like our lieutenant colonel, if they've been passed over for rank, they're really bitter. He'd been passed over. He was really bitter. I'll tell you some stories about him later because he becomes a real key in my experience in Vietnam. Anyway, that's later. So go to AVAD's training, and it's kind of funny. And I looked him up, and I got to remember what his name is, and I can look him up for you. But there was a guy who had just escaped 7 years of captivity by the Viet Cong, and he was there. He lives in Texas, but he's recovering and coming to San Antonio to the hospital. And we met him that night in the officers' club, the first night, Sunday night before classes started. And he wanted to go drinking with us. Really interesting character. He was a major now, and he had shitloads of money because he'd been paid for his 7 years of captivity.
Wow.
But he wanted to go to Boys Town in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, to get a hooker. We were going, no, we got to go. We got to start class tomorrow. Then, okay, you're going to give us a ride home. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in the back seat. I'm kind of half awake. I've been asleep a little bit. I look up. She says, you're now entering Mexico. Holy shit. And so we drove down there. It was like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. All the hoes be in bed sleeping. And so we bypassed, we missed it first. We drove about 20 miles, 30 miles into old Mexico. And we were dying of thirst because we'd been hungover. So we stopped at a cantina, and all I had was hot tequila. And so this is the morning we're supposed to start our classes. We're 4 hours away from class. It's 7 in the morning. It starts at 8. We're looking at going like, oh, shit. We're not even going to get to the first day and we're going to get in trouble. So he got us home. We got in trouble a little bit because the guy that was running the class, the pusher is a captain, may have been a major. He was the former team surgeon for Ohio State. And he had gotten divorced, and his wife ratted him out to the draft board, and he got drafted. So he wasn't really very military. Anyway, he said, okay, I could report you guys and get you in trouble, but I got something better for you. You all have strong stomachs, right? And we're like, yeah, we can do this. Whatever it is you want. He said, I'm going to show you some movies, and I expect you to be able to watch them and tolerate them and be good. Because I got to check. I got you 3 guys that you're in trouble, and I got another 7 guys in the room. And he goes, I'm going to see if it's going to be okay to show these. And yeah, they were maxillofacial wounds, people getting shot in the face. And when you get shot in the face, your physiological response, face just swells up to unbelievable sizes and gets really distorted. And they're running this aluminum rod to show you the wound tract in the movie because it's just doctors. And it's like, oh, it might be at least 2 of the guys of the 6 that were in there. We were the test group. We all passed. Show it to the other 6, and 2 of them puked right off the bat. And it's understandable. It was really gross. Before that happened, actually, I told you about going to the reception line. And in that group are doctors, and these are all freshly minted, not really in the military yet. just getting inducted. And this one guy comes out, he's foreign. And I don't know if he's Hispanic, doesn't matter. But has these like 8 rows of ribbons that he has bought and put on his uniform for things like the Spanish War. He didn't know any better, and he thought it was just cool looking. And we all got a chuckle out of that. He was the Spanish War was a little stretch, man. Spanish-American War, excuse me. Anyway, that school was okay. I don't know why it was ever really needed. We never had to do the things they trained us to do. They teach you how to do a crocothyroidotomy, where you open up your throat, open up somebody's throat to be able to breathe again. A lot of people hate this, but we had to shoot a goat in the leg and then debride the wound and make the goat.
Wow.
Because that was loads of fun. I think they do it probably on video now. They probably don't kill goats anymore.
Wow. How long was that school? How long were you there?
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
3.5, 4 weeks, yeah. It wasn't very long. Did a little too much partying there, but got out of there and went home for another 2 weeks or so. And then it came time. There's a lot of stuff that happened in that 2 weeks. That's how my first son came about, but that wasn't intentional or anything. But anyway, I flew up to Oakland, got there, and they weren't expecting us. So they told us kind of to hang out for a while. And I got tied up with a couple of warrant officers, and we hung out. I went up there and actually visited a friend too in San Francisco. And she was an interesting character because she was really big in San Francisco society. Took me to this place to eat dinner that was like done in orange velvet. It was pretty interesting. Pretty dicey stuff, pretty pricey stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just why I was waiting there. And then...
You excited to go? You nervous to go? You just kind of whatever?
It's like, you got to go someplace. Just today, when you're traveling, you got to go someplace tomorrow, and you start getting a little trepidation. I got to do this. It's not about fear about where you're going. It's I got to pack this. I got to make sure I get this. I got to make sure I get that. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of that. I mean, I had a duffel bag full of stuff, and no, there wasn't a lot of that. We were in Oakland for probably close 3 or 4 days, 5 days, waiting for them to give us an okie dokie. Then they gave us the okie dokie and put us on a plane at Travis. Travis is outside of Sacramento. And the worst plane flight in history. Not because of the fear of it coming, because you had 120 smokers on that plane, or at least 120 people contributing to the smoke. And by the time you reached Tokyo, it was totally gross. This guy that I was hanging with, he was one of the guys I've been in flight school with. He was a former Green Beret, had been in Vietnam for 5 years already, and was going back as a helicopter pilot now. He'd been up on the Cambodian border, Laotian border. He brought along a fifth of Irish whiskey, so we made Irish coffees partway there until we got trashed enough that we felt like shit. Excuse the language, but we didn't feel very good. Felt kind of grimy. We got to Tokyo, opened the door to Tokyo. I wasn't up near the front, which was really nice because I got and walked out on the platform at Tokyo, and it was clean air. It was cold. It was like, oh, God, this is better. Then they get you on board, take you to Saigon, to Tan Son Nhut, and they open the doors there, and it's this rush of humid air that really had an unusual smell to it. And it's just humid and hot and smelly, and you get there and you're going like, wow, okay. You get on the bus, You get on a bus to go over to the 90th Replacement Center at Long Bend, which is where all the recruits come in, or all the people coming in have to go, and they get dispersed out from there. You go to the 9th recruit, and I went in there, and because I hadn't slept a day and a half then, and I laid down. It's just hot, sweaty. There's no air conditioning or anything like that. And then all of a sudden I get woken up, said, well, you got to go over, we got a Jeep here, we're transferring you over to the 45th. And I'm going like, okay. But the thing I noticed when we were coming in from Tonsonute to the 90th Replacement is the buses had screens on the windows, heavy mesh screens. And that was to keep people from throwing grenades in there. You don't see that here in the States too often. Going like, okay, that's really nice. So everybody loves us here then? No. Anyway, you think you're over to the 90th. I went to the 90th and got over to the 45th. Got issued by flight equipment. That night, got to sleep a little bit. Had a meeting the next morning with the commanding officer of the 45th. We were assigned to the 45th Company, Medical Air Ambulance Company. And there's about 8 of us in there, and he's telling us about the potential assignments. There's one here, and he's telling us about the areas, and he goes, he looks it down to the Delta, and he says, one down here, and it's not very active. You don't do a lot. That's not true. They did a lot. Like here, it's really dicey. We've lost a couple of planes. There's a lot of activity here. And Phil, my friend who lives in Florida now, we both went, man, we'll do like A. And he got pissed at us. Are you smartasses? No. But you kind of described the place we wanted to go to. We came here to fly. And he was kind of ticked at us a bit. But next morning we were on a plane going to like A, helicopter. It's about 70 miles northwest, 60 clicks, 70 kilometers northwest of Saigon. And it sits right on the main pathway from the Ho Chi Minh Trail into South Vietnam. A lot of North Vietnamese activity. The 7th NVA and the 3rd NVA headquarters were in that area. Divisions. And they found some of them later, but they were like thousands of troops who lived there on a routine basis all the time.
Wow.
Down to the NVA that you didn't see them. Triple canopy jungle limits what you can see. Anyway, get to like A. If we get off the helicopter with our duffel bags and shit, on the other helipad next to us is another Dustoff bird from Cu Chi, though, which is adjacent about 30 miles west of this and southwest. Cu Chi's famous for a couple of things. That's where the tunnels were. Anyway, trying to think of where I was. Get me back to where I was. Going to like A. Oh, I'll tell you about the ship that was there on the other helipad. It's got some big holes in it, and they've taken the aircraft commander out of the ship because he had been hit by a 50 and had opened his arm up all the way like a razor. He hadn't been hit by the round. He'd been hit by this shrapnel that came through the cockpit. Phil and I are going like, could be interesting, maybe not. Phil's the one I told you about that is pretty crazy. Phil and Bob came later. Bob Eaton, Phil Porter came with me there, and he was unusual. He later went on to head the logistics, when he came back home, in the logistics program for the cruise missile system for Raytheon for the country.
Wow.
It almost killed him. Just the pressure, the intensity, and he did it for a long time, and then he just had to quit because he was dying. Anyway, he was, as a young man, he was pretty intense. Anyway, he was there with me. We started flying from that point. I mean, the next day I was on a helicopter as a pilot going up to a place called Swan Lock, XUAN, LOC, that was a pretty heavy area. And it's my first mission. We're going in to pick up what they said was a wounded lieutenant. And it was not an artillery, it was a tank unit. And they went to put him on. He had stepped off. He was a young guy, probably 22, 23, 24. He had stepped off the side of his half-track, and stepped on an anti-tank mine, and it cut him in half. And then they put him on. We didn't normally do people that were dead, kilos, KIAs, but in this case, we were there, so we just pinned him on. But half of it was one side up, and had the other half was down, and the intestines were streaming out the litter. And I looked at that and turned green a little bit and said, no, you got to look at this, and you got to understand this is what you're going to see. And so I just kind of forced myself to look at it until I accepted it, and then we moved on. It was eye-opening. And how it impacts you, it just means this is a job we have to do, and somebody's got to do it. And I like doing the job. It was a challenge. And yes, we didn't have guns, but it really didn't matter. In fact, it gave us the capability of carrying more wounded. We would also strip the doors off quite often so you could carry more wounded. Because especially when you got down the Delta, I'll tell you about that, because we had big events down there. Excuse me. And anyway, back up in Like where my first mission, the next mission I really recall well is going to a place called Quan Loy, which was north of Like about another 30 clicks closer to the border, Cambodian border. And it was dicey, to say the least. It was on a hill, the base, and the hills around it were taller than it. So I don't think it was a great choice, but that's just me. And it was Triple Canopy jungle. It was at the end of the rubber plantations, and you probably heard about the rubber plantations. Right? Oh, well, the large part of the area I was in Vietnam was covered by rubber plantations, primarily Michelin. And they kind of coexisted with the North Vietnamese in their territory. They didn't coexist very well with the U.S., blowing up their trees. So the U.S. had to pay them, I don't know, $150, $200 a tree. So they weren't doing that. So Michelin was a huge rubber plantation, stretched from south of where I was in Like to all the way up to north, like 70, 80 clicks of rubber trees, all planted. And one of the reasons I'll tell you about a mission that I did I was still a Peter pilot. But anyway, I'm a Peter pilot right now. And a Peter pilot is a guy that sits in the right seat of a Huey. It's a 2-seat helicopter, a pilot, and usually aircraft commander who is also a pilot, who is more experienced than the Peter pilot. We call them Peter pilots. Some cases we call them sandbags. They didn't like that because they were only there to balance out the helicopter so the center of gravity wouldn't be disturbed. But not really. They were there so we could. That's how I got trained. That's how they got trained. So I went up to Quan Loy with this Warren John Murray, who was really good. And I did my first mission where I flew one. And I overshot it and ended up hovering over the enemy position. It didn't get shot at because they had been vacated. A classic doobie trick. I exceeded my capabilities and the plane's capabilities to respond to what I did. And so I went right past the LZ, had to turn around and come back, and he wasn't terribly happy, but we got over that. Because it happens a lot, actually. It happened a lot with the people I was flying with when I was aircraft commander. Anyway, when we got to Quan Loy, they didn't have a place for us to stay. So we could either, sleep in a helicopter or find some place to stay. So we started sleeping in the helicopter, and then at least my thoughts were this was not a good place to be because they mortared this place every night. And a mortar hits in here, you're going to be toast. So we got out, and I got under the helicopter. And then I thought about that for a couple minutes, maybe not even that long, maybe a couple seconds, said, this is probably even worse. Anyway, we slept in the woods in the ditch beside the airfield because we didn't have a place to stay for a couple nights, 3 nights or so. And then it was kind of interesting. We had a new commander at the 45th trying to get these dates organized. I'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, it was a grubby place. The soil is dark red oxide soil, red oxide soil, iron oxide. It gets into everything. They didn't have any water there. They had to truck in everything basically from south. And so therefore, it was dry season. Dust is about halfway up your thigh. Not quite that, but halfway up your calf. And it gets in your pores and you just turn red. And you stay red for about 3 days. I did take a shower there once. I'll tell you about it. Because anyway, it got kind of funny. But, we were there for 3 days, flying missions. We didn't fly a lot of them because there weren't a lot going on at that point. There wasn't a lot of missions that were being called in. There were enough. Probably flew 5 or 6 flights a day, all of them lasting a half an hour or less. And a lot of our missions were like that. They were short. We tried to be there right when they got wounded, really, and get them out and get to a hospital in what's called the golden hour, which is the first 60 minutes after they've been hit. Because then the probability of success is about 90%. Once you get beyond that hour, it drops down to about 40% or 30%. Anyway, we like to do that, get in there fast, get them out. We did. It was a interesting experience with they brought a ship in, they actually flew in, guys, took a 37 millimeter anti-aircraft shell into the cockpit. Turns out they were getting radar-controlled guns up there. Now, they hadn't had that before. It was all done by, that's why you have tracers, so you can see where your shot's going. But they were now getting radar-controlled systems in, which really much more devastating for helicopters. Helicopters are comparatively slow. They hit him in the right, on the aircraft commander's side, and blew off one of his feet. And maybe the other one was damaged pretty badly, too. And the pilot flew him in, but that was kind of a hint to us that things were different. We were starting to fly not up high anymore. Now, usually when you got out and you were flying to mission, you got up to 2,000 feet. 2,000 feet was outside of small arms range for the most part. Anyway, you get up to 2,000 feet, cruise up there, and at 2,000 feet, radar-controlled weapons can be devastating to helicopters because you're just not fast enough. But you could hear them through your FM radio if they were scoping you. You could hear them. You could hear the wave pass. Start hearing this thump, thump. You're in trouble. By the third one, you're in trouble because they've locked you probably. Third or fourth one. Anyway, so they moved us out and moved the ship back to standby back to Lyke after about 3 or 4 months. I spent 2 more standbys there. One of them was interesting because they gave us a bunker out on the berm line we could stay in, and there were snipers all over the place in that thing. Because they had cut the trees down all the way down to the base of that hill and partway up the other one, but not all the way to the top. So all those trees over there served as bases for snipers, really. And I was there, and the one time we got to take a shower, got clean. They brought in enough water. They said you could take like a 2-minute shower or 1-minute shower. So I washed up, got the red dust off of me somewhat, walked out of the shower, and my towel, got about 15 feet to go to the bunker. And these people are all yelling at me. I'm walking over there, and I looked down, and there was a sniper in the tree, and he was targeting me. But then I got into there, and I didn't get hurt. But they brought over what's called a duster and fixed him up. A duster has got it's got a quad 50. And they just pointed at the tree a little bit, and the tree was gone, and everything else from the top up was gone. They actually did more than that. What they did was kind of cruel, but I won't go into that because people in war you lose that edge of empathy, and you do things, you see things that really challenge your beliefs of humanity. You see people you know who you think are good people, excuse me, do some pretty horrible things. And that's probably the hardest lesson I learned over there, is that you see people you thought you could respect do horrible things. And yeah, it's not good. Anyway, that when I was getting shot at, I basically hit the ground, hit the mud or the dirt, dust, and crawled through it. I was still as dirty as when I went to take my shower when I got back. We flew back to, excuse me, flew back to Lyke after our standby was over, and we fly in. This is my non-military stuff coming out. We fly in, I land in, pull it into a revetment. Revetments are like two walls that they park between, so it protects the helicopter from mortar blasts and things like that. And I park in there, and then the next thing I know, I'm writing in the logbook. Next thing I know, I've got this guy yelling in my face. And I'm going, he was ragging on me about the way I flew in and how I looked. He was a colonel, lieutenant colonel. And I'm going like, well, whatever, go talk to my commanding officer. Turns out he was my commanding officer, and I didn't make a friend for life with that. We had later had many face-to-faces. He didn't like warrant officers, me in particular, and I didn't like him. And it comes out in other things. Anyway, after totally making an ass of myself in front of my new commander by basically telling him to piss off, the next thing I really have a great memory of is a mission out of Lyke along the road to that Quan Loy, because they had to truck everything in. The NVA would set up traps coming back. Really, they want them coming back because gasoline trucks blow up really nice when they don't have any gasoline in them. They're much better. Got prettier bomb. So they were coming back on the convoy, was coming back down Highway 9 from Quan Loy, and they got hit right where the jungle stops on the road. The NVA had planted themselves on both sides of the road, and there were a couple hundred NVA shooting rockets at them, 50 caliber machine guns, and it's actually written up in a story. The book is called Chicken Hawk. He was a Loach pilot, and we flew in there to pick up about 6 wounded, got him in. We're getting peppered a little bit. On the way out, we get hit by a 50, more than peppered a little bit, and the engine started misbehaving. Temperature, exhaust gas temperature, which measures the health of the engine, really started to climb. So I wanted to go into this fire base, which is called Thunder 1, which is right off of Lyke. It was the first one of the Thunder group, or Thunder 2, I don't remember now. But they were under mortar attack, so we couldn't land there. So I flew it into Lyke, and it made it there no problem. Put it down, put the collective down, rolled off the throttle, and shut it off, and the engine just came unglued. Blew all the engine out the back end of it. That's what turbines like to do, that if you mess with them inside. And evidently we'd taken a hit and had taken a little chunk out of the casing and dropped some stuff inside. So it was eating itself up early. But it made it back. I love the Huey. That was a D model. D models were same physical dimensions pretty much as the H models. The H models had a bigger engine, more power. And we had a mix of Ds and Hs, but after a short period of time, we got all Hs because I had got most of the Ds shot up. Either I did or Phil did. Then I'm trying to think. The next mission I really recall is at Lyke. Now, I've only been in Vietnam really 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks at this point. I'm flying. The mission's a night hoist mission, And I've never done a night hoist. I've never done a hoist at this point. The hoist mission is when you go in, you can't land. So you hover at a distance above them and you drop what we call a jungle penetrator, which is a device designed to penetrate through the trees and not catch on them. And then the seats fold out from it and you can put wounded on them and strap them on and get them up out of the jungle. Anyway, night hoists are particularly the worst because there isn't a lot of power in Vietnam, so it's dark everywhere. And a night hoist mission, because you need a point of reference when you hover. You can't just, you're in three-dimensional space, and you can't do that. Humans can't do that. Maybe some could, but most of them cannot. So you turn on your landing lights, so you have all your lights on, and you're sitting there right above the trees. Kind of can see you from fucking 30 miles away. Anyway, we go in. I'm flying with a guy who's a second tour guy. He's a captain, MSC officer, good guy, Bill Covington. I'm flying with him, and we come in. We can't land, but we don't need to really do a hoist. We just can hover down low enough. They're going to lift the wounded guy up, and a crew chief and medic will be on the skids, and they'll pick him up and put him on a litter. It was a it was a 1st Infantry Division operation. There was a company of 1st Infantry out there, and they didn't know what they had run into. The guy that we were picking up, the wounded guy, was the point man. They had walked into an NVA battalion base camp. There were hundreds of NVA there. So we pull up. I'm Peter Pilot. I'm a new guy. Never have done this before. And I'm sitting there. I'm hovering at about 12, 15 feet. And I notice out of the window, the trees are just lit up like Christmas trees. Just flashes everywhere. And these red things come out, tracers, and then all of a sudden, bam, bam. Something hit the back of my helmet. And I'm going like, oh, wow. That was weird. I look over at my aircraft commander, and he's slumped in the seat. He was hit in the head, and he's just laying over, this blood running down his face. And I'm going like, shit. The guys in the back are going like, we got it. Just keep us here. We got it. It's all good. I'm going, well, it's really not so good. Look it. He wasn't, it gave him a concussion, and it split his head open across the top. It got the bone, just the skin, and he's just bleeding like a dog. So he recovered actually before I got to our first stop. Because I had to fly from there to a place called Dao Tiang, Dauting. It was the head of the missile rubber plantations, where the headquarters where we had a base there, and that's where we had a standby out of in an aid station. That's where I was closest. So I flew it into there. I left all the lights on, and he was freaking out because I left the lights on. I said, well, I really need to see where I'm going to land if I don't land on a base. He later on said, that was really a good decision. He said, but we got to the base, and I've never been there before, so I didn't know where the helipad was. And they couldn't turn on the lights of the helipad because they were getting mortared. And I'm going like, well, this is really not cool because I don't know where I'm going down here. So I pulled up, and I pulled into about 100-foot hover, which is really embarrassing. I never should have been that high. I should have been about 10, 15 feet. I couldn't see it, though, so I didn't know when I was over it. Anyway, I just hovered down and landed. But that thump I heard and felt, the bullet hit the back of my helmet. Just clicked it. But at the same time, we got hit so much that in the back of the helicopter on the right side in the hellhole, there was a rescue pack that contains a 5-gallon pack of water, 5-gallon thing of water in case you go down somewhere. And there it'd have to be the desert because you didn't need 5 gallons of water in Vietnam, but there was a standard pack. And it hit that, and the water was blowing up to the front and running down the back of my neck. And I was going like, and I was sitting there after I landed the thing, I was going like, okay, you got to look. And I went back and rubbed the back of my neck, and I looked at my hand and went, that's clear. Took a lick, not blood. I'm good. Could be cerebral fluid, but I'm good. And we got out and we were good after that. Somebody came in and picked him up, gave me another plane, another aircraft commander, and we went back flying.
Are you at the end of that? Is your heart racing? Was it just kind of? You were just kind of in the mode.
I was just kind of zombied out. No, I was just doing what I was told to do. Hover the plane, and if they're willing to sit back there and do it in the mix, because they're getting shot at directly. The thought process is just that this is my job. I'm just doing this. I'm just flying this helicopter. Whatever happens, happens. And so we flew out and went to the aid station, and no, I got right back in a plane later that night, like an hour and a half later. I was flying again into another LV. It really is a testament to my lack of knowledge of what's going on around me more than anything, I think, because it was different. Then I had a mission I flew. We had a commander. He was really a good guy. Okay, after you've been there for 30 days, he has to do an officer efficiency report, or 60 days, something like that, when you get to a new unit. And he called me in and he goes, well, I'm sorry, Tom, but I can't really give you a great one. I had done a couple of things, like I had taken a helicopter down to Saigon and brought back a bunch of hookers for the guys. I was treating it more like MASH than really really what was happening. I wasn't astute enough to understand what was really happening, I don't think. It was just fun and games.
That's probably how you were coping with it, though.
Yeah. Well, he told me, he said, he caught me we did it twice, and he caught me with the second load, but he was really good about it. He was standing there telling me that we really can't be doing this. And I'm going, okay, sir. He says, I don't want you to do it again. Okay. And he said, you're not going to do it again, right? And I said, no, sir, I'm not. But right behind him, all these little chickies are running out of the helicopter and going into the hooches back there to see the guys. He knew that they were there. He was just a good enough human being and a smart enough guy. He wasn't going to waste talent by getting me in trouble and doing something. But he flew helicopters like he was still in flight school. And that's what everybody used to say. They hated flying with him, because he would go into an LZ with a standard helicopter approach, 60 knots. Okay, that gets a little dangerous because you're slower and they get more time to shoot at you. So nobody liked flying with Major Belcher. I didn't mind. I flew with him, though, and he tried to get us killed. We were flying a mission for the 11th Armored Cav, and they were in heavy-duty contact. And we go in and we get these guys out, and he's taken out, and he comes up and he crosses the path of the F4s that are coming in and dropping napalm. And I'm looking at this F4 coming at us like it's a jet. It's coming at us really fast and getting really, really big. And I finally just had to shove the control down a little bit so the plane dropped a bit. And he went, whoa. This thing went shooting by us. And we kind of and got out. But he was a good guy. And he was really a decent, he could fly fine. He just didn't change his style when the style may have required a change. Anyway, he got shot in the foot on one of our missions. I was flying with him. I think he was happy to go home. Then we got another guy in, and I had developed a reputation. Okay, I didn't tell you about one thing. When I was flying again as a Peter pilot, right before I became an aircraft commander, we had a place that was under mortar attack, and they had a couple wounded, and we're going to go down to pick them up. So I'm flying, and I got this guy that he's even shorter than I am. He's the aircraft commander, and we get down there, and they say, "Come in low because we're firing counter rocket, counter mortar fire out, and that should be clear for you." So I got in. He said, "Get low," so I got it low. I got it really low. I got it. Because they're rubber trees. They're all planted at the same time, and they all go pretty much at the same rate, except for that one tree. Couldn't make it over that one tree. I only hit the top of it, but I hit the top of it, and then that added to my reputation of being a little out of control. I exceeded the capability of the helicopter, really, and my own capability. I didn't do that again.
You topped the tree?
Oh yeah, just the very top of it, just very
Little
top.
haircut.
It took the chin bubbles out, but it freaked everybody out. And the guy who was my aircraft commander was like 2 weeks from going home, and so he was freaked out. He never flew again. But it was funny when I met his wife 25 years later. And he had died. But she said, "We know you." So it was, it kind of carried around that I'd done a few things like that. Then there was,
You told me you got shot down. What was that story?
oh, more than once. More than once.
Give me
It
some of
depends on
those
what you
stories.
call getting shot down, too.
Yeah.
If they shoot the helicopter up and it's no longer usable, it's shot down as far as I'm concerned. So a number of times. But the first time I got shot down really was in Lackey when I was an aircraft commander doing triple canopy jungle pickup. And my crew decided we didn't need to do the hoist because it would put us in a vulnerable position and they were in contact with the enemy like 20 feet away, 30 feet away. So they got me to hover down through this triple canopy. Okay, I'm moving an inch here and an inch down here, and we made it down in about 10 minutes. We got down to a level at which we could do a pickup. And as soon as that started happening, we started getting hit. I couldn't go back up 1 inch or 1 millimeter time, so I went up through the limbs. The helicopter hit the tree so hard, one limb, split the spar. The helicopter blade has got a spar run down the front of it, and then it's all aluminum after that. Aluminum, really lightweight, snare foil, just a sheet, just a skin. But split the spar from the aluminum skin, so it was throwing aluminum stuff out when it was flying, and it was bouncing like this. I got it across the river before I had to put it down because that plane was never going to fly again, really. It was just totally destroyed. I hit the tree so hard, the rotor was here. And your rotor system and your engine are on the same gauge, and they're together. The engine RPM is tenfold different than the rotor RPM. Rotor RPM is around 3,600 RPM. And this thing is about 340. And or 360, when it hit, that split. And it split 3/4 of the way down. It was just hardly a wing anymore. And I got across the river and landed, and everybody walked away happy.
Wow.
I was happy because, I thought it was going to go back down. I thought it was going to go back to the ground, and we're going to have to spend time down there. If we'd have fallen from 200 feet, we wouldn't have spent time on the ground. We'd have been dead before we. But anyway, there was that one, and then there was later. So we're not there yet. I'm trying to remember, there was just, we were working with the 1st Air Cav, the 11th Armor Cav, the 25th Infantry, the 1st Infantry, the 173rd. These are all units that were operating in that area, and all of them had major formations in that area. I did a lot of work up in a place called Nui Ba Den, which is a mountain, Black Virgin Mountain it's called. It's right outside of a place called Tay Ninh, which is really kind of at the top of the civilized part of that area of Vietnam. From there on, it was triple canopy jungle all the way to the border and into Cambodia. And it was a harsh place. The North Vietnamese stormed this. We had a radar set on top of this mountain, and they owned the inner half of the mountain. They had tunnels all through this thing, and they had a lot of ground troops that were in the mountain. And they would come out every now and then and try to overrun the mountain. And I got there one time. This was a 25th Infantry action. And the ships that had been in before me, the two were both from a different unit that serviced them primarily. And they had both been shot up pretty badly. And they called me, and I went in, and I landed this place, and they said there were NVA and spider holes all over this place. So be careful. I'm sitting there on the ground. We're loading the wounded. And this guy pops up like 15 feet from me with an AK. Crew chief has an M16. He hits him immediately. Otherwise, we'd have been toast. Because he was just like, hi.
Wow.
But that was kind of like all the time. I really specialized in hoist missions and night hoist missions because I liked the challenge. And other people were like terrified of them, especially night hoists, and I really kind of liked them because I would tell my friends they were sissies, and I did them. And but Phil and Bob never turned anything down either. We never turned down any missions. The only mission I didn't complete was one I will tell you about in a while when a friend of mine got killed.
Tell me the dynamics on the helicopter. There's the pilot.
There's a pilot and aircraft commander.
Mm-hmm.
They sit in 2 seats in the front. There's a crew chief and a medic in the back. The crew chief is almost always in our units was cross-trained. They were both medics, and they were both crew chiefs. They were really talented people, and really.
And the crew chief's responsible for the helicopter.
Yes, crew chief's responsible for the helicopter and the medic. I mean, the medic and the crew chief worked as a team. They didn't divide it up and say, you this is yours. Because there was a lot of work to do. When we got back from flying missions and shut down for the day, they still had a lot of work to do. Clean up and get ready for the next day. Where officers were bums and they could go do something else.
And the crew chiefs are stuck to that helicopter.
Yes.
But you're jumping around.
Yeah, we had six helicopters. We put 3 up a day. We had 7 or 8. I think we had 6, though. We put 3 up a day, and 3 were down, usually getting maintenance of some kind. And, yeah, they were almost all D models when I got there. And then we rapidly changed over to H models, so we got them all damaged. Got them damaged, and they got hit by mortars when we were parked. I went into a mission it was outside of Lyke, just outside northwest of Lyke. There was an old French minefield, and it was on all the maps. But for some reason, these people missed it. And they were first infantry people. They tried to land 6 helicopters in this minefield, and 2 of them were in the trees. There was a bunch of people scattered around. We set off a mine when we came in. They said they'd cleared all the mines, but we set one off. We didn't get hurt. They got a couple guys that got blown up a bit, but not really hurt. There was no shrapnel in them. They needed to go back and rest for a couple days because I'm sure they were concussed pretty badly. But we were coming in and we came to a hover. Just as I came to a hover, set it off. Boom.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's an old French mine, so it wasn't as powerful as ones we use. And they didn't know it was there. But they did know it was there because it was marked on the map. And then evidently their map didn't have it marked. And I don't know what the deal was because it was marked on our maps. We knew where it was. We knew what the story was on it. And you just stayed out of that area. Anyway, it was, I was trying to think of I was at Dao Tiang, that place I was telling you about when they got overrun in March of that year. Before they understood what was happening, there were 200 North Vietnamese inside the wire, like inside we were pinned down in our bunker, but only because...
You were there when that happened.
Oh, yeah. The commanding officer of the little medical unit there, the detachment, a captain, tried to tell us to go out and get our helicopter and get it off the flight line. They were blown up with assassin charges when he told us that. They were going boom, boom. I'm going up, crossing 120 yards of open ground with the NVA right there. No, we're not doing that. We didn't do that.
Middle of the night?
Yeah, we were there overnight. We were there for...
No, is this happening in the middle of the night or during the day? This is the night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The NVA had tunneled under the wire. And this place was interesting because it was it'd been the house of the people who ran the rubber plantations. It belonged to Michelin. It was a big Olympic-sized pool.
Wow.
Interesting place. And anyway, they had 200 North Vietnamese inside the wire. They had to bring special forces in from the outside to root them all out. But we were in our bunker, and this guy came running down the road with the satchel. And a couple of guys opened up, and he dove into the bushes. And then out of the bushes came this plaintive yell. I'm an American. He was Filipino American. He was an engineer. Fortunately, we didn't kill him.
Wow.
Because while we were all pretty decent shots, we were pretty bad shots in the combat situation. It hadn't been our forte.
And you're hunkering down in your bunker. You freaked out thinking
No.
You're just thinking they're going to take care of it.
No, I think they come here, we take care of them, and we'll be good. Hoping that they're going to put some special forces or paratroopers in there to clean them out, and they did. But we had 4 guys, and we had 4 M16s, and we had plenty of ammo. We could hold out for maybe 5 minutes or so. Weren't really soldiers, although they claim in the military that you're a soldier first and foremost. And certainly we were trained on guns and that, but that was a long time ago. Although I was a pretty good shot. I hunted, did stuff like that. I hunted till I came back from Vietnam, and then I sold all my guns, and I don't do guns anymore at all. Don't want them around me. I just don't trust people. Because one of the things that happened when I was in Vietnam, guy gets up in the middle of the night, freaking out. Doesn't want to lose all his friends in combat, so he shoots them all. With an M16.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was pretty ugly. And then we did things like we had to go and when the 11th Armored Cav was in the Michelin and in the jungles outside the Michelin, they were pretty crazy. General Patton was fucking nuts. He had a mission where they were pinned down. There was a platoon-sized unit in a bomb crater, and they had some people around them helping them, but they couldn't move. They were pinned down with a machine gun, and they had 4 or 5 wounded down there. And I had responded to their call, and I was on station, and he was going, go in and get them boys. And the guy on the ground's going like, no, we're not ready. We can't be ready. He comes down here now, and I said, if I go down there now, you listen up with this however many 1,000 pounds of burning helicopter on top of him. That's not going to help him. He came back later to chastise me. He followed me back to Lai Cave to tell me that he was pissed at me, but we got him out. We got him out according to how the lieutenant on the ground, who was the ground commander, told us we needed to do it, and we did it that way, and we got him in and got him out. He didn't like that because we took more time than he wanted. And I went out one time in the middle of the night. We didn't normally, when I first got to Lai Cave, the unit that had been there before, they're going to think I'm maligning them, but they were less responsive than we thought they should have been. You had 3 priorities of pickups that you could have. You had routine down here in the middle. You had urgent up on top, and you had these guys down here that are just like, he got a cut on his hand. He needs to come here to get a Band-Aid put on it. Everybody who got crazy fit this category, and a lot of other people, but the ones that when you're out in the field, they wouldn't pull you out unless you were pretty crazy. We had to go in and hoist people out in the middle of the night. They'd have to sandwich them between 2 litters because they had just gone off the deep end. Because it really was horrific. To fly into it, jungle was horrific. The smell was horrific. The degree of security was non-existent. Even though the North Vietnamese got one of our tanks. They don't know how that happened, but 11th Armored Cav was in tanks with the new Pershing or whatever new tank they had, and they thought it was just undefeatable. Not the right word, really. But they thought it was just
invincible.
Invincible, thank you. And it wasn't. They lost the whole tank. Now, the 1st Infantry found it later, buried by the North Vietnamese, but the tank just disappeared. They got in and stole it, but we weren't ready for tanks. Tanks a lot. Anyway, there's some other ones that there was just a lot of, it was continuous activity. It wouldn't be like when I'll talk to you about when we get to the Delta here pretty quickly. The Delta was not only continuous, but it was long distance. And so when you started up at 7 in the morning, you were going till 7 at night usually. And that's why the hours really cranked up. And the missions, because you weren't taking them back to necessarily a U.S.-held facility, you could drop them out Vietnamese facilities. So there was a lot of those around. So there was just a lot more of that kind of activity. But anyway, back in that, so we're still going along, and we're getting a good bit of combat damage up at Like because NV are pretty active, and they've got heavy weapons, and we're getting a lot of in-contact missions. That's what we get paid for. But anyway, the commanding officer, the one who doesn't like me very much, decided on a new policy. You had to have gunships to do a hoist. But it seems reasonable until you realize we have no gunships that are our gunships that we can call on. And so I told the commander when he first produced, I'm not the commanding officer, our commander for the division, for the detachment. It's going to happen. You're going to have a bunch of guys on the ground that are wounded and dying and no gunships. What do you do? He said, we'll address that when it happens. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's going to happen to me first. You watch. And it did the next day. Got a hoist mission south of Daotiang. Combat had really started to wane at this point. This was late in 1969. So we got this mission, and it's 6 wounded, and they're all traumatic amputations. They had walked into a command-detonated claymore trap, and it just cut their legs off. And the guy who was on the radio was a medic, and he was missing one leg. So we get out there, and there are no gunships. And I'm going like, well, how long is it going to take? 20 or 30 minutes. All right. And I talked to the crew, my pilot. I'm the aircraft commander, my pilot, Don Rock. I'm talking to the crew. What do you think? I said, I'm down for it. Give it a shot. They all going, yeah, this is what we get paid to do. We flew in. We were dropping the penetrator through the trees, and all of a sudden one crack comes out. The bullet came from level with us, so it's up high in the trees. Came through the window on the right side, hit Mr. Rock in the elbow, ricocheted off his elbow, missed his armor plate, went between his ribs, blew his heart up. He was dead before he finished the statement that I'd been hit. And it was really, I'm sorry to get, you're still good?
Yeah.
He was a young man who had been assigned to the 45th at first, and they psychologically abused him. He didn't do some things they liked or didn't like, and the whole unit basically bullied him and bullied him and bullied him. By the time he got to us, Don wasn't really a pilot anymore. He had no confidence. He had zero confidence. And he got assigned to me. First time he was going to fly with us. So I take him out. We're going to do a night hoist. Oh boy, fun. And we get up to the spot, and I tell him, we got the marker. Set it up. Let's go get him. We get in. He's coming in, and he just takes his hands off the controls. He says, "You got it." And I went, "I got shit. What are you talking about?" And then we slide right by the landing, by the hoist marker where we're supposed to be hovering. Slides right over the enemy, and I'm going like, I'm not taking it. He got his hands back on the helicopter. I said, take it back around and do this again. They had brutalized him so much that he was just terrified of everything. So then Don was killed. We pulled out of the mission. We had to because we had one pilot and probably not looking good. They all died.
The guys on the ground.
Yeah, they all died. Even though Phil was right above me circling, it took another 10 minutes to get gunships there, and by the time Phil got in and set up, they were all dead. I get back to Like Hay, and they take Don's body out, and then I'm looking for another helicopter. Go back out. No, you're staying down here. You got to talk to the colonel. Basically, you are under house arrest, and you are being taken to Long Binh for court-martial, general court-martial for disobedience of a direct order. And I'm going like, okay, nothing I can do about that. I got MPs there to take me. They take me to Long Bend, and they put me in a little room down in Long Bend. My hooch, I have to fly. I fly down there now as a Peter pilot again. That was what they were going to do to embarrass me or to make me feel bad. Didn't do any of those things. And they wanted to find out if I was really crazy. So, because I did some things that would think you might think I was a little crazy when I did them, but no, I wasn't really. I had reasons. I went in one time to make a pickup at a place. I'll go back to this in a second. I went in to make a pickup at a place, and there were 3 guys that wanted to ride back, and it turns out we didn't really have a pickup. They just kind of faked it and were using us as a taxi. And so I was in at 2,000 feet. They could see me, and I pulled it like nose up and fell over like that and spun in really hard and then land. And the 3 guys went, we'll take a bus back. We're not going to ride with him. Anyway, it was no crazier than any other helicopter pilot there was my age. One story my wife wanted me to tell you too is I had gunship support a lot of times. Gunships and hunter-killer teams with a scout and a gunship. Scouts were great. I wanted to actually go fly scouts on my second tour, and they wouldn't let me because they were still punishing me, for disobedience of direct order. The colonel was. Lieutenant colonel, Anyway, so these guys would cover me, and they were really fabulous. I mean, I had real confidence when I went in with these people. And I did a lot of things for them. Like if they had an operation going, like they were inserting their ground troops, I would take off and go in. And if I wasn't on another mission, which was probably pretty frequently, I would just hover above them at 3,000 feet until they got wounded, and I'd go down and pick them up within, short amount of time and get them out of there. Anyway, this guy, I'd never met him, just talked with him on the radio. I knew he was 6'4" or 5", had balls the size of basketballs. He was the epitome of John Wayne in a helicopter. So they invited me over to go over and have a beer with them one day, and I flew over to Fuloy, where their base was. And I land, and I'm sitting there, and this helicopter comes landing, gunship, a Cobra lands in beside me over here. And this guy gets out of the front seat, and he's a little Jewish guy from New York who's skinny as a rail and is about like 5'6" like me. And I'm going like, that's not John Wayne. That's not John Wayne. It was John Wayne. He was really good. And they were, you get people like that you work with, and they were really not only just professional, good soldiers, good people. I wanted to fly guns. I wanted to fly scout for them. I don't fly guns. So scout was probably the highest mortality rate of any pilots. But they seemed like so much fun. These guys were as cool as it could get, except it was killing people, and I didn't really like that part either. Anyway, that's how I met John Wayne, and John Wayne was cool. But I am down in Long Bend now, and I'm under house arrest. And I'm just the daily.
How long is this going on for?
It'll go on for 3 months.
Wow. No flying for 3 months?
No, I was flying. No,
you're still flying, but
I'm flying as a Peter pilot now because they can't trust my judgment.
Okay.
And he's assigning me people who have no experience as an aircraft commander to assign it because he thinks that's really demeaning for me. And I got into with a couple of them, and they said, you go ahead and fly. You run the missions. We'll use my call sign. You run the missions. Okay. Because they didn't have really any experience. Anyway, most of the people there were pretty good, but they got into it with, it's like a mob or crowd thing when they were abusing this guy, and they just all did it. Don. And it was really quite sad when he got there, but he got better, and then he died. But I was his mentor, and that one really hurt. And now I'm in jail for it. But at the same time, the 1st Infantry Division commander is recommending me for a Silver Star. So we got a bit of a conundrum here. And so Lieutenant Colonel Roller, he kept me there just to abuse me, really. And he would call me in and he would tell me what a piss poor soldier I was, and I would agree with him. Okay. And he was going like, he was warrant officers were the bane of the military, and it's the worst thing that ever happened. Yeah, whatever. Well, after about 3 months of that, 2.5 months of that, I had gone home because I had leave coming from the extension. I had gone home and come back. And he's still calling me in every morning, putting me at parade rest and sitting there railing at me. I'm like, okay, whatever. But then I started submitting requests for transfers every 30 days, as Army regs allowed me to do. He didn't like that because he had to sign them and pass them on, whether he approved it or not. They had to go to division. And division was going like, why is this pilot who's got great experience and has a great record, why are you harassing this guy? And why are you doing these things to him? And he didn't have an answer. But so as the story goes on, I'm standing there and after I come back from leave, he's railing at me about what a shitty person I am, okay? And I will never submit another request for transfer, he says. You understand me? And I said, sure, but U.S. Army regulation says that I can't do this. You won't do it. You understand me? And he got in my face. He was right in my face. You won't do it. He was screaming at me. And I just said, well, I'll think about that. But while I'm here, would you sign this request for transfer? I had it in my back pocket. I know it seems like a setup, it was a setup. I didn't know what his response was going to be. His response was to come across the desk and grab me and pull his fist back. And the XO and the first sergeant jumped on him and pulled him off of me and got him out of there. He went on R&R like 2 or 3 days later after he sent me on the tour of it's supposed to be my death knell, where all the gunshot missions in any area that I could reach, they were mine. Because gunshot missions, anything that was gunshot, you knew they were at least active at some point in the past future. Not your distant past, excuse me. Not the distant past. Anyway, so he had another guy in there with me who was a lieutenant, really a good guy, forestry degree from Georgia, and he didn't know what he was doing there either. But he was really fun to be around. So it was like, okay, we just fly these different places and pick up gunshot wounds. And then we were flying about 3 days doing that. And then I got a call from the unit to come back to Long Bend at the headquarters. And I get there, and the XO was a really nice guy from Louisiana, major, little short, dumpy guy. He wouldn't fit in Hicks's army at all. But he said, he's going to kill you or you're going to kill him. I said, no, I'm not doing anything. He says, well, it's either you're going to kill him or he's going to kill you. You got to go someplace else. I'm putting you back in your unit with the 57th. And if he's coming around, if he's going to be in that area, I will let you know ahead of time and you can go hide. Well, he couldn't really do that because, anyway, I'll tell you later. It was kind of funny. So he sends me back to the 57th, and it was great, man. My 2 friends were grounded for too many hours. I got back there and went through all 5. I went through 5 of their 6 planes in 1 day.
5 of the choppers
I got combat damaged or destroyed in 1 day, and we had to get some more in a hurry. The last one was at night. We'd been flying for 16 hours that day. And the guy that was my Peter pilot was not somebody I liked a lot. He wasn't a very good pilot, and he really had a shitty attitude. Anyway, he's my pilot. We're both pretty tired. We had some exciting stuff that happened on the way down. I figured he'd be awake because on the way down to a place called Soc Trang, we're on the way down, we're following this canal, and there's this helicopter up on another canal. You can see it. It's a light helicopter at night. They have these big lights that come out. It disappears in a ball of flame. They hit it with a rocket. Somebody hit it with a rocket, and they had a bunch of explosives on board that they were using to dump, and it just went up and disappeared. Anyway, we go down to Soc Trang. We get down there. We get our business done. We drop the Vietnamese off for the Vietnamese hospital. And I'm plotting out the next mission because we got another place to go. And he starts to take it up to a hover, and he's got one of the rear skids is caught on. You know what PCP is?
No.
PSP, excuse me, PS. It's the stuff they lay down on dirt. It's metal, holes in it all over the place, and it's just supply, just really to provide a surface.
Yeah.
Well, all the landing pads, a lot of landing pads were PSP. It keeps the dust down, shit like that too. So we land and do our stuff, and I'm plotting on the map where we're going, and he starts to pull it up, and it's got hooked a little bit, and I said, "You're hooked on the PSP, just back it up a little bit," and he just jerks on the handle of the collective. The collective is where you get power going to the for lift, to the rotors for lift. It pushes you away from the ground really fast. He did that. It rose up on its tail on one side because it was still hooked on the ground. Did a rotation and fell back down, and shit was flying everywhere. It was broke, to say the least.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah. I got back and they grounded me because I had too many hours. I had 110 hours. You can only get 100 hours in 30 days. And that 16-hour day put me over the limit, and they really were questioning what happened. I never knew really what happened. I was looking down at my map, marking. The crew chief was a friend of mine who lives in Oregon, and he told me later, this is 5 years later, said he went to sleep. I said, he what? He went to sleep. Said I was watching him. He pulled the collective up part way and started to hover, and then he just rolled over and he kept pulling as he just rolled over going to sleep. And I'm going, oh, that motherfucker. I'll hunt him down. I can't use that in thing, but I'll hunt him down later. Anyway, got back and just, we're back flying the next day. Oh, not the next day. I had 3 days off because I was over the limit. But as soon as we can, we're back flying because being on the ground is boring, and it turns an hour into a year. I hated being on the ground because it was just so boring. I had another job. I'll tell you about it. I did all the flight assignments. I did all the scheduling, which was fun because this is how I got so many hours and how my friends got so many hours. I would make up the schedule, and then I'd go around to these people who I knew didn't really want to fly. They were there just to get their ticket punched so that when they went back, they had Vietnam experience and they would be moving up the ladder. They had no desire to fly, and I could name more than one or two. And so I go around to them and say, you don't want to fly this day, do you? Or, you don't want this search of 3 days? No, I don't want to do that. Good. You stay here and do something constructive, and we'll do it. I used to take their flights, and Phil would take flights. And Phil and Bob would get pissed at me because I was the one doing the scheduling. They thought I took advantage of that. Now, that would never happen.
Of course not.
No. But that's why we got a lot of hours. And a lot of the flying for the Vietnamese was you'd get up in the morning and you might fly all day, go to different places. We picked up families. Sometimes we picked up families because the mom was pregnant. They wanted to get her to a hospital in the big city in Canton. And so we bring the whole family, the pigs, the kids, the in-laws, the laws. And it was okay. I was a little ticked at first because it was taking away time that we had to serve people in the field. But then I started thinking about it. For them, this is probably a thrill of a lifetime, to be honest with you, because they wouldn't have come in. Normally, they wouldn't come into Canton to have a baby. They have a baby where they live somewhere 80 miles south. But get to go to Canton, you get to go to the marketplace, you got to bring the pig, And they were nice people. They did give me a party. Later on, not closer to the end, but probably 3 or 4 months from the end before I left, 5 or 6 months, 6 or 7. Got really close with the SEALs and Special Forces in the Delta because we flew for them a lot. And I liked working with them. They were...
What are those? How are those missions different?
A small unit and always in the middle of shit when they call you. I'd go do things like this I wasn't supposed to, and they'd probably be pissed at me for doing it. This one is out on an island in the Mekong. Now, Canton was right The Mekong flows right next to Kanto. The Mekong flows out of the Laotian Mountains, I think, or Thai Mountains, through Laos, down through Cambodia, and through Vietnam to the South China Sea. Huge river. And it was the lifespan of this town. But the Viet Cong occupied a lot of the Delta because there was just so much space. And they had, built defensive positions and all that over the Delta. So it was an area of a lot of activity, but primarily by then, by the Vietnamese. The Special Forces did Special Forces things. They were operating in a place called Kamau, which was the U Minh Forest in the far south tip of South Vietnam. And that was a crazy place because they lived on this boat that was under the water in the river.
Wow.
And they had it tied down, so it stayed there. They had 2 helicopter pads on top, but everything, all the living quarters were down below. And they were in the middle of Viet Cong country. It had never been anything else but. Kamau, the U Minh Forest was really a nasty place because there's so many Viet Cong in there. Anyway, I used to find the one thing I was going to tell you about. I was flying in to pick them up on this island, and there were like 6 U.S. guys, and they had a Vietnamese tax collector. They were trailing along behind him with a rope around his neck, and they were bringing him up. And we didn't normally do this, but I was talking to them on the air, and they couldn't get a helicopter to come pick them up. They would have to spend the night on the island. And they said, that's probably not really a good idea. It's probably pretty dicey on the island at night. So I went down to pick them up. Well, the elephant grass was so deep on this island that I couldn't get enough lift to get all of them on board. I could get all but one. And I told them that. I flew out. I came back around, flying in, land again, and all of a sudden, they only had 6 anymore. Tax collector met his maker. But I did a lot of work with them. There was one mission. I really enjoyed this one, actually, because it was really heavy duty. But this is like watching Apocalypse Now, or even better than that. Did you ever watch what's the Vietnam movie, the funny movie?
Good Morning Vietnam, or no?
No. Later than that, much later. The one that was absurd, Tropic Thunder. We were always in the shit, according to Tropic Thunder. It was absurd enough, that movie, that made fun of Vietnam, and it should have. Anyway, when I got out of Vietnam, got to school, I did study how we got to Vietnam, which is interesting because it has certainly colored my attitude about what transpired. Anyway, we're back in the Delta flying around. I get a call from these SEAL guys that I knew that were up in Kanto, which is the base, where the base was, our main base. And they've got 6 guys that are pinned down by a 300-400 man NVA force down in the Delta. They're pinned down in a rice paddy, and they can't get them out. My commanding officer was down there. He tried to get him out and took a bunch of hits in the helicopter, so they had to forego, and it was turning dark. It was dusk. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a try. I mean, this is, when I say it's like Tropic Thunder opening, there are phantoms coming through and dropping napalm, and there are like helicopters everywhere shooting this place up. And I've come flying in. It's a lot of activity, a lot of fire. And there's nobody in the rice paddies I can see. I mean, they said they were here. And then I'm just about to touch down, and they come up out of the mud. They were all right there. I almost landed on one of them. They jumped on board, and they just, because they have guns. They got guns that fire real fast. They sat on the side of the helicopter and sprayed them as we went out, but we didn't even get a hit. So I flew into the little base that I was telling you about that had the 2 helicopters. On one helipad was my commanding officer's helicopter, captain, I can't remember his name. It was not flyable out. And so I landed, and we dropped off the guys because they weren't wounded. And then I told the captain that I wasn't going to give him a ride back because he was too much of a sissy, man, that he couldn't get in there and get those guys out. He loved me for it. We actually got along great with him. One time I went down there, I was flying down for the SEALs and doing something. We landed, and the Army had really crappy food. I mean, everybody knows that. That's kind of one of the routines. We were on a Navy base, though. We were adjacent to a Navy base, so we could go over there and eat the Navy food, which was really pretty good. But you had to schedule your time to do that, and we didn't get a lot of time. So we fly down there, and we're dropping some guys off and picking up some stuff for them. And this guy comes up from below, and he said, would you like some lamb sandwiches? I just made some fresh bread, and I've got a fresh lamb roast here, and we're all going like... So he brought up this tray with about 60 of them on there. We ate as many as we could before we got back. We gave the rest of them to the rest of the guys, but we were going to get all that we could.
I bet that was great, huh?
Oh, fresh bread, fresh cooked bread was amazing. I didn't have good eating habits when I was there. I could have had better eating habits, but I was still kind of really a dumbass. But that's the way it is when you're young and you think you're educated. You think you know things that you just really don't know. Anyway, we're down the Delta flying, and we had that one where he rolled it over on the pad. A couple of others. We had a transmission failure, and that's kind of devastating the helicopter. Fortunately, we were low leveling, and we just ran into a rice paddy, and nobody really got hurt. The helicopter was totally destroyed, but we were all good.
How high above the ground when that happened?
We were only about 7-8 feet up.
Oh, so that's good.
Oh yeah, we hit the rice paddy. It was great. It was just like mud. It was gross getting out of there because they fertilized their rice paddies with human waste because that's what they have. I didn't tell you the story about how we got rid of human waste. They burned it. And that was about as gross as you could get because everything would be, when they did burning, everything would get coated by this nasty, oily, smelly aerosol. Gross stuff. Let's go back to flying and food. I tell you, because we were doing this thing with the Vietnamese where we pick them up and bring them in, we didn't promote it really, but it just it promoted itself. They told other people, and they told other people we'd still be bringing them in. And so probably about 3 months before I left, I got a call from, got to talk to one of the Special Forces guys that they had a bar in town that we used to go to. And he said, the Vietnamese want to give you a honorary dinner. Okay. He said, well, I'll get it set up. So he got it set up, and it was me and a couple of other pilots and a couple of crew chiefs. And we go over and we're drinking. I'm really holding back on it because I know they bring out this beautiful little puppy, and they give him to me, and I'm holding him, I'm petting him, and the Special Forces guy next to me is going like, don't become friends with him because he's dinner. And I'm going, no. So I had to drink a lot of Bossy Day, which is a distilled rice wine that they boosted up till I got so drunk that I could eat a piece of dog. I don't remember what it tastes like. I don't want to remember what it tastes like. I've never told Bella that one, or any of my other dogs.
Oh my.
It was interesting. It was, I love the Vietnamese people. I love them more now that I've come back and learned some more. And I've got some friend of my oldest son he was a boat person, came over here in the evacuations from Vietnam. Brilliant kid, a brilliant man, and has brilliant kids, Vietnamese American kids. He married a girl from Nebraska. But anyway.
That's amazing.
Going back, yeah, I think it's great. I saw a lot of other things too. I was flying in one time to the hospital, 93rd evac, I think it was, at Long Bend. And just flying along, watching a C-47 come in and land at Tan Son Nhut, and there was a slight explosion, and the wing just folded up over top of it like that. Down to the ground, they were gone. But that was kind of amazing. We were sitting there watching it as we were flying in. I don't know if it was hit by something or just a mechanical failure. We had We flew, I think, the best helicopter in the world at that point in time, and we had the best mechanics in the world. You couldn't get any better than the kids we had working on. And we had the best medics in the world. You couldn't get anybody who was more dedicated or more talented. They did things that you can't do here today, probably, to save people's lives. There was one mission if I go back to Dao Tiang, go back out of the Delta, go back up north. We picked up a guy one time, he's shot through the chest, and we get him into this place, and he's got a nick in his aorta, and he's just blowing blood out. They've got cut downs, medics got cut downs on both arms, which are things like tubes like that. They're squeezing stuff in, trying to keep him propped up, his blood pressure up at a certain level so he doesn't die. And then the guy comes in who's now the commanding officer of that little detachment up the medical aid station. He's a major, and he's this Polish guy, and I'd never gotten to talk to him. He'd just been there for maybe a couple weeks. And he cracks his chest and repairs his aorta there. He finished repairing it on board the ship going back, flying down Saigon. Turns out he was on the original DeBakey heart transplant team. The Army had just mistakenly assigned him to he never came back. They kept him down at the cardiovascular center in Long Bend, but it was pretty cool. He was pretty cool. And one time, again, still up in that same area, another wild tale is I go out one night, I get a call, got some, not wounded, got some prisoners you want to haul out of here. Again, we don't like to do night hoists. Well, I didn't mind doing them, but you don't want to really do them on a routine basis because you're a target. But we went in and picked these guys out. Turns out one of them was a doctor. They had a hospital up north of the place I told you about, Dao Tiang, in the jungle. It was a North Vietnamese hospital. And this guy is a North Vietnamese doctor. And he graduated from Southern Cal, University of Southern Cal. He was really nice. We traded stuff. And I took him down. He's a prisoner of war, but he's taken to there's a Vietnamese hospital, North Vietnamese, in Viet Cong Hospital. They set up in Long Bend. And they had as good of hospital staff and as good of hospital supplies as the hospital for U.S. and all of our allies. So he went to that hospital to work. But he was really nice. And it was cool talking to somebody who had been to Southern Cal, who knew Southern Cal like I did. Just happened to be on the other side.
What a small world that is.
Oh, yeah. It was like, he gave me his belt, a big NVA thing on it, and I gave him some stuff. I gave him one of my hats. Oh, story about hats. You got to be wearing hats, man. There. Hats signify which unit you're with a lot of times. So I got my hats. It's a purple hat. They're all purple hats for this unit. Just what was available. And it's my lucky hat. It rides with me through all this stuff. And one of the missions, when I said I had a lot of ships that got torn up, one of the missions I flew was we were again south of Dao Tiang, south side of the Michelin, and these 1st Infantry Division soldiers were pinned down by a bunker. The problem was, though, is they were safe, really, but the sergeant who was leading them is on top of the bunker, and the North Vietnamese are in the bunker. They don't know he's up there. But the people who could cover me if I'm going to make a pickup can't shoot because he's up there laying on it, and that's where they'd have to be shooting. And they would have killed him. So we pulled up to about 90-foot to 100-foot hover, start dropping the penetrator down, and this is where your experience comes in to help. It should have been, I learned from this. They just turned the 30 caliber machine gun they had, just turned it up straight up and just gave us a blast, and it hit all in my seat. I had 6 shots that hit my seat. Drove me right to the top of the stops on the seat because the seats could adjust up and down. Drove me right to the top of the stops. And my hat and my map. Okay, that's one other thing. Got maps over there. Aviators got maps. You covered them in plastic. You laminated them. and they stayed with you. You could mark shit on them and then wait and get rid of it. Well, that was my map. And it takes a while to get one laminated because you had to send it to the States and get it to come back because they didn't have any lamination machines in Vietnam that I was aware of. Anyway, get back and I pull out after we get hit. I pull around in a circle and come back around again and say, okay, let's do this one more time. Let's do it a little differently. It came in from a different angle. And we pulled up and we got him on the penetrator, got it back. But the helicopter had a hole that big underneath my seat. And the seat was just pepper. I was amazed I didn't get any shrapnel from it, nothing like that. It was just drove me right to the top. And given that I was short, I couldn't have my hands on the controls because I was like, I needed longer arms and longer feet, longer legs. Anyway, we did that mission, and there were others like that. I mean,
like when you're doing that, how long are you hovering to get them up on the thing?
Probably 5 minutes or so, or less.
That must be intense.
No, he's just hovering.
That must seem like forever, though, when people are shooting at you.
You don't really, and I read this one about, I thought that was one you guys did, but somebody did with the Dustoff guy, was the colonel. He said, we just calmly let the bullets pass by. Well, you really don't know they're passing by, dude. You just don't pay any attention to them because unless they hit you or unless they hit something that splatters in your face or hits you with something, you don't really know they're there. You can hear them.
And you're doing a job.
Yeah, you're just flying, and you get knocked off the controls when you get shot. Well, you heard it when it hit you. That's what they say. The one that you don't hear is the one that kills you.
Tell me about, you did 2 tours.
Can I put my feet up like this?
Oh, yeah. Did people think you were crazy when you went back?
No, they knew because both my friends did 2 tours too, because when they came out with this program, in June or July, of 69, they said if you have less than 10 months of active duty still required of you when you reach the States, you can be let go. We will let you go. And we all calculated how long we needed to extend to make that mark because none of us were going to stay in the Army. Yeah, there were people that thought we were crazy. Not everybody took advantage of that program, but we did.
So all told, you were how many months over there?
22 and a half.
And how many missions do you think you flew?
3,000, over 3,000. And I estimate that really, I had a plaque. They gave me a plaque. It was 3,300 some missions, and the patient number was 5,000 something. Probably 60% Vietnamese. And yeah, I would imagine Phil and Bob didn't get quite as many hours as me because I was cheating and getting in first.
You were making the schedule. So
I was making the schedule. Why do you think I took on that job? That was so I could get out of here and be out there. I flew, I'll tell you about one. This was really harsh. We were flying out of Canton, and we were flying in weather. It was monsoon season. It was really heavy. I mean, as heavy rain as I've ever seen. Sheets really didn't describe it. Maybe blankets or quilts. It was just coming down. And so we had to fly out. Guy broke his leg. That's always an issue when somebody breaks their leg, especially if it's femur, because of the femoral artery running beside it. Because you can bleed to death into your calf or into your thigh, excuse me. So anyway, he needed to be picked up. So we flew, we took off. We couldn't see. We had less than probably 5 feet of vision. We took off and we flew up there. That's not hard to do, given that, it was a lot of bounce, a lot of lightning flashes, that kind of stuff. And you can't see anything, and your helicopter's flying all over the place. But we get up there, and they start putting out parachute flares so we could see where they are. And they got a fixed location, too. This is not out in the jungle. This is a fixed location on the riverside. And we can't see them. And I get up, I fly up, and I drop down. I get down to about 200, 300 feet. Can't see anything. I pull out, come back around. And they shoot one parachute flare, and it goes off right next to us. I mean, like 5 feet away. You can't see shit after that. So I just pulled up and said, no, I can't see you guys. I'm not going. We went out the next morning. He was fine. He had a sprained ankle or some shit. And we just couldn't do that. We couldn't get to the ground. I had one time when I went down, I was on a mission in the Delta, and the moonlight was fabulous. And you could see everything. And I thought my vision was really, really good then. It isn't today, but it was then. And we're going in, and I get down to about 150 feet, and I flip on the light, and there are trees going by us. We're below the tops of those trees. So if I hadn't been lined up the way I was lined up, and if I'd have turned my lights on, I'd have seen them. But I could have run right into those really easy. And I had another one where we were coming up in monsoon season, and I've got this guy that I really, really don't like flying with me. I can tell you a story later after we're not recording about him, but because he evidently held on to this hatred of me for 50 years, 40 years. Anyway, he's flying, and I start to get a little vertigo, so I turn it over to him. He's not supposed to be looking outside. He's supposed to be looking right at the instruments. He's got vertigo like a dog, so he goes into a descending right-hand turn, and I'm seeing the feet go on an altimeter feet go by me like I'm going like, no. I pull back, and I goes, you're in a descending left-hand turn. You're going to run into the ground in about 2 seconds. No, he was fighting with me over it. And I finally got him to get off the controls. I said, just look at your gauges. Look at your attitude. You were like this when you should have been like this. Anyway, I didn't like the guy much. It was raining so hard, though, and we were getting thrown up and down 200-300 feet at a time. We made it back to the helipad, and I don't think we're going back out tonight. I didn't.
You had 9 lives.
Well, I really had.
You had more than that. You had like 109 lives.
I had more than that, and it was just like, but it's all just stuff happens, and sometimes it happens to you. Sometimes it happens to people sitting right next to you, but it didn't happen to you. I had a guy that I was flying with in Delta, and we also didn't end up friends. I didn't like him very much either. He was a married guy, and we had a thing with married guys. They were usually much more reticent of doing the things they needed to do. Not all of them, but a bulk of them. And we understood they had family back home. They were already living the life that we might live later. But we weren't living it then. Neither one of the three of us were married. And we didn't even have any girlfriends. We had Dear John letters, but no girlfriends. Anyway, I'm kind of getting off on that.
Yeah, what's the story? You had a story with him, though. Something happened.
Oh, yes. We're in the Delta flying, and we go to make this pickup. They've been harassed by a sniper. And we go in, and we land, and it's pretty routine pickup. And we're sitting there, and when you flew, the only part of your body that was really protected was the seat about mid-thigh up to your neck, just below your neck. That was set in an armored seat. And that was pretty well protected, but that leaves a lot of you open. And that was only from behind. So anyway, when you're flying, what part of you is the most important, do you think, if you're flying? What part of you physically is the most important? Not for flying, just for you.
Your head.
What?
Your brain.
No.
What? Your heart.
No, you're a male. You're a young male.
Oh, my nads. Yeah.
Your nads.
Yeah.
So you have no protection there.
Yeah.
So you take your 45 or whatever weapon you're carrying and stick it in your crotch.
Yeah.
And I was amazed this happened. So we hear this crack, and he just bends over, gone. Wasn't gone, really, but sniper shot us. They were actually shooting at the guy who was trying to bring us down. People used to do that all the time. They get out. You see it in the movies. They tell you to come down like this. Well, tell them, get down, you dumbasses. We could find the ground. But anyway, he was who was being shot at, I'm pretty sure. It hit Mr. Wright, and it hit him right in the gun. Drove it up into his nads, but it didn't ricochet off and tear his leg off. He had to go. He was going to R&R 2 days later with his wife, and his balls were really big, and they were kind of that color, blue.
Wow, that is a crazy story.
He hated me for that. And I was going like, oh, I didn't like line him up.
But that was the only thing. Just
Yeah.
to get bruised and
and it didn't ricochet off. I figured, but if you're really not having good luck, it'd ricochet off because for it not to ricochet, it has to hit pretty flat.
Yeah. So all that impact went in.
Well, it went back to his nuts, but it didn't cut his skin. It didn't break his skin.
Wow.
Because if it had angled off to one side or the other, your femoral artery's right there.
Yeah.
Another thing, kind of an experience that was really awful, but it was showed with Dustoff how the help they could give you. They had a couple of Navy guys were loading white phosphorus missiles in a Navy gunship helicopter, and it went off in the revetment they were in and peppered them with white phosphorus. And if you know white phosphorus, it burns in air. And so we had to get to them, coat them with oil, and get them to Saigon before they burn through, because it'll just keep burning and burn right through you. And so we got them, and they were peppered with it. And then we got a bunch of oil. We had a bunch of oil with us. We carried for that reason. Coated them, and they kept bursting into flame in the spots where you need to coat them back up. But I took a helicopter, and they said, Huey won't do 150 knots. Yes, it will. You're not supposed to do 150 knots. We had to trash the helicopter after it came back because it had to go for a complete overhaul. Because I rented I felt all the power would go, and I was going as fast as it would go to get it there. Because having these guys burn up in the back thing, it just flash up. I'd be seeing it out of the corner of my eye, and woo, cover that guy up.
Were they unconscious or?
No, they were conscious.
Oh gosh, I can't imagine.
They were in a lot of pain.
Oh.
I don't know if they survived or not. We had one where we actually hit a guy. Actually, we didn't hit him. He hit us. He walked into the tail rotor, a U.S. lieutenant, and it knocked the shit out of him, cut through his helmet, and laid open his brain. Now, we picked him up and took him to Saigon, and he was alert, awake the whole time.
Wow.
You could see his brain. And it was like, yeah, that helicopter rotor, tail rotor, running really fast. You don't want to walk in. Main rotor will just kill you. The helicopter, the small one, will just chew you up.
Wow.
But there's no reason to do that, except you don't see it because it's spinning so fast. You don't see the tip of it. You think you see it, but you only see part way up. Anyway, so working in the Delta was an experience. It was Vietnamese people are great people. And we really should have left them alone. But I understood. I was down with Kennedy when they sent the troops over there. Kennedy did it. It was all very romantic. We're going to stop the communist hordes. And then it became something more than that.
Coming home, how did it end?
I flew right up to the day before I left.
I got to ask. I know a lot of guys talk about when they're at the end,
they get closer.
They get a lot of, they get nerves because they don't want to be going out and getting shot down.
No, I didn't get nerves, but usually they give you 30 days at the end of your tour. They just sit you in the office for 30 days, give you other jobs to do.
Right.
I couldn't do that because boredom was just so heavy. I kept flying right up 2 days before. When I ended my flight, my last flight was to a place up at the Cambodian border, a place called the Seven Sisters. It's 7 hills, the only hills that exist in the Delta. They're up there. And they're all probably 600 meters or 500 meters, something like that. And the South Vietnamese had troops on the top of the main hill, Nui Koto, and the North Vietnamese had everything down below. And they were attacking the people on the top of the hill when I got the call. Okay, we had been starting the Vietnamization process. And I had been assigned a Vietnamese co-pilot and a Vietnamese medic. I had a U.S. medic on board and a U.S. crew chief and myself. The Vietnamese pilot wasn't very good. And he had never been in combat. And we get a mission up on that mountain that night. They're being overrun. They've got a boatload of wounded, and they're trying to get off the top of this mountain so they don't all die. So we go in. We can't land because we're on the side of the mountain. You hover up on one side, put the skid on there to kind of balance so you don't hover around on it. And start loading, and I'm hearing this. He's the Vietnamese pilot's fucking flipping out. He's just really flipping out. In Vietnamese. I don't understand a thing he's saying. Vietnamese medic he's doing okay. He's helping. But I'm hearing this boom, 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 getting closer. Going like, what is that? And he said, they're rolling hand grenades down the hill at us. I'm going like, okay, I think it's time to go. But we had 25 people on board, and they were hanging on the skids. They all wanted off that hill, but we had to kick them off the skids, and I had to kind of bounce it and scrape it over the edge and then drop off into nothingness. It was pitch black. Drop off into that because I didn't have enough power to get airspeed and get any kind of thing. So we just had to go through the dark for a ways, and then I pulled it out because we had enough distance, but enough altitude, and took us home, and that was my last mission. I just decided that was it. I could have quit a month before that. Because was I getting shaky? No, I had to. Oh, the one time I didn't. There's another one in there. When the North Vietnamese were beginning to come down, and this is invasion of Cambodia, they carried with them a lot of heavy armament, 50 calibers. And so we got a call up on a mission. We had a bunch of wounded, and we get there, and there's like 7, 8 gunships floating around this area, all kinds of shooting going on. Turns out there's like 2,000 NVA in this tree line that's about 500 yards away. And they tell us that when we're coming in. They've already shot down 2 Cobras, and we got to come in and get these guys out. Don't spend a lot of time here. We're going, oh, we're not going to. So I'm flying in with this guy. I am just like riding because this guy needed a pilot. He was a friend of mine from the other unit. And I said, shit, I'll ride with you. I'll just work the radios and put my feet up on the dash and watch the sun go by or whatever, watch the day go by. And so we went out there. I mean, he was flying. He did a maneuver to go into this place that really kind of freaked me out. We were flying at about 3,000 feet. He rolled it over, and I don't have any problem with any of this. And we're screaming to the ground faster than I had ever gone toward the ground, which kind of made me uncomfortable. And then we get down, and to pull it out, he starts pulling it out, and I'm going like, you don't have enough time. You don't have enough altitude. We pulled out about 5 feet above the ground. He caught ground cushion because if he, another 3 feet, we'd all been dead. 3 or 4 feet, we'd hit the ground. Anyway, we got in there. And I'm sitting in the right seat. I got my feet up on the dash. I've got the armor plate pushed back. I'm talking to the guys that are circling the gunships and the guys on the ground. And all of a sudden, this is bang, the helicopter gets boom, boom. Every instrument light comes on. Every one of them, fire, all this. And then I look back, and we are on fire. We're burning from right there next to hells, and there's a guy sitting in the hellhole, one of our kids, who was just going out for a ride. He wanted to get enough hours, but he turns out to be okay. But we're aflame from just behind the pilot seats all the way back. We took 3 or 4 50 cal hits. Unfortunately, they were all down below, ripped out the fuel cells. We flew it out. We flew about another half a mile before I told him to set it down because the tail's burning. It's aluminum and it's going to burn right off. You don't want to be flying it when the tail falls up. Results in bad events. We landed there, and they came out and picked us up about 3 hours later. We set up our little perimeter, and we got the Vietnamese wounded out of the helicopter. We left one in there. We forgot him. I had to run back in when the helicopter was burning and get him out. He wasn't very happy because I had to pick him up, and he was shot through the shoulder, but I had to do a fireman's lift on him. He was screaming and hollering. It was painful for me to have him that. Anyway, that happened long before the final mission.
Going home.
Got went into Tonsanute. I don't think I went to the 90th. I didn't go through any other thing. My shot card wasn't up to date. So they had me stand there where they gave me 4 shots in each cheek. And then they put me on a plane home. I don't remember that. I slept all the way home. I got to Sacramento, Travis Air Force Base, where we came in. And we had greeters that were not very happy about what we were doing there at Travis. They were screaming, yelling, throwing shit at us. And then I got taken into because I am getting out of the Army now. This captain comes in and takes me aside and takes me in and wants to talk to me about this, if I really want to get out. And maybe you could get a direct commission. Maybe I could offer you a direct commission to captain. And I said, where would I go? Well, he goes, well, you can go fly training helicopter pilots at Fort Walters. That's a big no, because there were people like me that went through that program. No, I'm not doing that. Or you go back to Vietnam. And I said, no, not today. 2 weeks later, I might have done that. Just because you get out and you're kind of lost. The world's a different place. And it's hard to get your feet back on the ground because everything has changed. And it's not the world you remember when you left a year ago or 2 years ago.
71? What year was this?
70. Late 70.
Did you tell people you'd been over there? You kept that to yourself?
Yes, I didn't know. I didn't keep in my uniforms. I didn't keep anything really. I had to get later if I needed things, I had to get it later. No, it was, you didn't put it on a resume because people didn't think you were stable. They wouldn't think you were stable because all the stories come out about Vietnam vets and being pretty much crazy. And a lot of them had reason to be, but that still was that. And I went to work for Raytheon a bit. I didn't put it on there. Being an officer and being a leader never did shit for me as an individual. That's okay. But they tell you, you're showing leadership. No, you're not. You're not telling anybody this because they look at all of you as being damaged humans. I had one incident later. I didn't talk to anybody for 25 years. Not my wife, not my kids, not my parents, not anybody about it, because it just wasn't appropriate. It seemed like it wasn't, it didn't feel comfortable for them more than for me, because they just don't understand. And you try to tell them about it, and they oh yeah, that must have been horrible. Horrible is not really a description. It just scratches the surface of how ugly it was. Anyway, I had a guy sitting there, actually my boss, my advisor, former head of OSHA, good guy, kind of a good guy, at a dinner. He's got 2 other guys there that are heads of this petroleum organization that builds refineries. They're clients of his, and he wants me to work with them. And we're sitting there, we have a nice dinner in this place in Chicago, outside of Chicago. And then he comes up after being there for about 2 hours. He came up with this question, and I almost shit my pants with it. Not really. I almost got defensive about it. So, Tom, tell me what it was like in Vietnam. And I just looked at him and said, you don't have a basis to understand. I can't really tell you what it's like. Those are just words. Vietnam was an experience. It assaulted all of your senses, your vision, your smell, your taste. All of that is different. And to tell you what it's like in combat, you don't have any basis at all to understand, like, what it's like to get shot at. Hell, I don't know what it's like to get shot at because I never asked the people who are shooting at me, because you just sitting there and then things go by you or things hit your ship. They're hitting the ship. And you're just kind of going like, probably time to get out of here. It never crossed my mind until the 50 caliber event. We got shot down. We got called back out that same night to the same place. Then it got to me. I didn't want to go back in that place. Turns out we didn't have to. My friend Bob, he was on the night shift, we were on the day shift, and he went and did it, and they didn't even shoot him. They were all gone. They'd headed back to Cambodia because they got caught out in the open and they had lost too many people. So when he went in, it was just like, land, put your people on board, take them to the hospital, go back and rest. Anyway, when I got home, like I said, I didn't talk about it for 25 years. I didn't tell my kids anything. Now I've been trying to write the story for some time, and I know how to write. I mean, I wrote 30 or more professional papers, but that's not the same as writing about emotion at all. I mean, writing scientific papers is just...
You find this harder?
Oh, it's way harder. Well, way harder because I also just talk in kind of plain terms. And I don't think a lot in terms of modifiers to the things I'm saying. A lot of adjectives and adverbs that may make it softer and more understanding. I don't have that. I'm not an author, in other words.
You got married. You had a great career. You went to school. You had kids. You got grandkids.
It was a good run.
But some of this came back with a vengeance at some point, I would think.
It did. Yeah. Well, it got worse slowly. I was going to the VA. They wanted to send me to a group. I don't do groups. I especially don't do groups whose experience was vastly different, and they wouldn't understand what I was talking about, nor would I understand what they were talking about. I wasn't on the ground, sneaking around, crawling around, or living in a foxhole at night. That didn't happen. I might have a better understanding of what they experienced if I did, but that isn't what my experience was. My experience was I lived on a base, and we got mortared, and we got bombed, and we got shot at. But at night when I was there, we had guards around us. It didn't cause me to lose any sleep, ever. The only thing that caused me to lose sleep was the heat and the smell. The smell was different than what we're used to, and that difference was kind of jarring when you first got to it. And it's kind of jarring whenever you're there, actually. I don't think it's changed that much. I mean, they're a country that is really has a great history, and they're really great people. They're smart, decent. Anyway, I got home, went to school, lived off of the VA, back when the VA gave you enough money to go to school and live barely. My wife worked, and we had two kids. One kid was from a mother by another, who is great. He wasn't with me till he was 18. The mother wouldn't tell him anything. Anyway, he really wanted me to produce this book because he thought that Gina and Christopher, my other two children who were with me the whole time, thought they had heard all this stuff and they knew it. And my daughter told him, no, he never told us anything about this. Never had a reason. My oldest son gave me a reason. Other than that, I probably wouldn't be talking to you now. Just because, yes, it came back with a vengeance, and I eventually treated it with Zoloft because nothing else would work. And I take Zoloft now every day so that I can not be mean and cruel. I'm not too mean to my wife, but I can get that way really rapidly. I can get so angry that I may not eat for 5 days. I may just sit and brood and be angry. And I've talked to people it didn't help. They ask you why, and sometimes it's just the most trivial things. It's all there.
I can see you reliving it.
I relive it usually once or twice a week. I relive it at night. I relive it almost every night, actually, but I don't relive all the bad ones every night. There were a lot of fun ones. Tell you how my crew chief shot the helicopter down. We were hunting crocodiles up at Dao Tiang because the Saigon River ran through Dao Tiang down to Saigon, and they had crocodiles in it. And he told me we were hovering up there, bad place, stupid idea to be hovering up this river. It was all NVA territory, Viet Cong territory. And they shot people, killed them on that river all the time. But we're hovering up there, and he sees this crocodile or alligator. I think it's crocodile. And he wants to shoot this crocodile. Okay. We hover up alongside the crocodile. Every time he goes to shoot, the crocodile dives.
Huh.
So I'm flying along this river here, and I hear this, and then all of a sudden it's boom, boom, and the ship fucking gets lifted up. And then he decided the crocodile was not going to go along with him shooting him, so he got his grenade launcher out, and he put 2 grenades into but it peppered the whole underside of the ship with shrapnel.
Gosh.
We had leaking fuel like a sieve. We had to pull it over to the side and park it. He's the guy who's a 17-year-old crew chief. He got out of the Army, went to school, went back, and was one of the first pilots to ever fly with the whole rig they fly now. He was the lead commanding pilot when Mogadishu happened. They were his people.
Wow.
The Night Stalkers, they were his people. He was their IP. He's quite a character. He'd been around a bit. He was there when he was 17, and he was a great crew chief. We became great friends. And there's more than him. I got some really good friends out of those. I mean, I don't see or hear from them now, but they're just as old and demented and demolished as I am. The guy with the 6 or 7 Sorry Tom letters or Dear Tom, they were all fabulous people, and all from different parts of the country. Louisiana, Arkansas, California.
Tell me about the Dear John. I don't know if people know about that, that you had the place where everyone put their Dear Johns.
Yeah, well, because it's not as traumatic as you think, because most males figure out when they're not married to them. If you're married to them, it's probably more traumatic. But if you're not married to them, even if you're talking about getting married, you're not married. And the chances of them being single by the time you get back, if they're a decent-looking lady, are probably pretty slim. And you understand that when you go over there. I mean, in basic training, they tell you all the time that your girlfriend's out screwing Jody. So you don't have to think about her. So whoever Jody is, Jody's in trouble. But, it was an expected thing. It didn't happen to everybody. It happened to a lot.
But you had a board that you'd post them on.
Oh, yeah, we had a bulletin board, and we had a section of the bulletin board where you posted your Dear John letter, and everybody got a chuckle out of it because some of them were really quite humorous. I didn't see anybody fall apart because of it or get devastated because their girlfriend back home shut them down or blew them off. Nope, they just kind of moved on. Well, with the guy that had 6 of them, that was a really source of a lot of humor. Because he was a sweet talker, too.
What's your takeaway now, looking back for you now, where you're at?
I could have done better for myself by taking care of myself better, including what went on in Vietnam. I was still a kid that they put in charge. I was still a kid. I did kid things. I tried to turn one upside down, flying it. And I came real close. You don't want to do that because you lose all control. I told her,
trying to do a loop or what?
Trying to do a loop like that. No, get up here. It just falls. So I got up that far and I rolled it over to the side and I pulled out, but I was at 5,000 feet. It took me 4,000 feet to straighten out. So that was a dumb move. I knew it was a dumb move. I had 4 people riding with me too. 4 crew chiefs who were all wanting me to do it, but I was still a kid. I still did things that people would say, it can't be done. Oh, yes, it can. And I hadn't learned yet that sometimes things shouldn't be done. But I did learn that from there. How it changed me personally, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever know how it changed me personally. I know it did. I came back, I was nowhere near the same person I was when I left to go over there. And
how could you be?
Yeah, I just fell back into myself, drew into myself and didn't tell anybody, didn't talk to anybody, didn't mention it. One friend I had, we talked very briefly, but he didn't want to talk about it either. He lost his right leg there. He was on the ground, and then he claimed that I picked him up. He was in the Coochie area, and he worked with the units that I work with all the time, and he got hit. He was stepping over a berm, rice paddy berm. Got hit in the right here, and it blew his leg off, really. Just left with some skin. And then when he was putting his other foot down because he was falling down, he stepped on a mine, and it blew up underneath him. And he was peppered with shrapnel. He died on the field. He died in the field. He died in the hospital. He died on the way to Japan. He died when they got him back to Letterman. They kept him on morphine for a year. Gave him a new leg, a plastic piece of shit. And they kicked him out of Letterman after having him on heroin or morphine for a year. He kicked the habit himself on his own with no help from them. He and I talked a little bit because he thought I was the one that picked him up. He was sure that was the case. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't always look back, and if I did, I didn't see. You're not focused on one thing.
Yeah.
I just see like stuff. Anyway.
It's unbelievable to me how young you guys were doing what you were doing.
Oh, yeah. And still today, they're talking about doing stuff today. It's the same thing. That's why you get young males. I think as one of the reasons why the current administration doesn't want young females in there, because young females are actually more mature. They are more emotionally and substantially settled, understanding the world and life. They know a problem when they see one, and young males will go like, I can outdo that. I can get by that, when you really probably can't.
Well, man, I just think of all the people you helped out of a bad situation over there in the midst of
I never thought about that much. It was just, continuous.
Yeah, you had a job to do, and you did it.
Every day. All day, every day if I could. Once I reached over 100 hours, they kept setting me on the ground.
Yeah.
Just because I was walking around like a zombie, like I hadn't slept in 4 days or something. I was pretty trashed out when I came home. I mean, I was the picture of the old combat grizzled vet when I was flying. And these young guys were actually terrified of me to start with because of the stories.
Did you have a nickname?
No. They just shied away from me. Some of them.
Yeah.
And some of them came up and wanted to fly with me. And we flew. And they learned that I wasn't any crazier than they were. It's just they had a job to do. I had a job to do, and you do your job. This is why it was so offensive to me, that letter I told you about, the memorandum that came out, said basically leave them on the ground to die. That was just untenable. I was not going to do that. And it nearly cost me Leavenworth. He really wanted to send me Leavenworth. He really wanted to beat me up. Really, what I really wanted to do. I made him so mad, he was like Pete Hegzest. When he gets mad, he's ranting and raving and throwing shit. And I really didn't plan that last thing I was telling you about the request for transfer. I was just going to do that. That's what I was going to his office to do.
Just happened.
And then he started that rant, and then I gave him that, and he just went ballistic. And then I did a few other things, too. I mean, he tried to tell people things about flying that he didn't know. He had 25 combat hours in 2 tours, and he had really no combat hours. He'd never flown into an LZ. And he was trying to tell people how to fly, and I would go, not a good idea. And this meeting was about 80 people, and he would start yelling at me about it. Well, you got a better way. Yep, here's a better way. Combat tested, better way. And I just did that all the time to him, too. I created the mess that I was living in. I purposely poked the bear every time the bear showed up around me. So I can't really blame him terribly for all of the stuff he did to me, but
you got a little rebelliousness in you.
Oh, she had a huge amount then. It was the fact that you were telling you our job is this, and the kind of the hero of Dustoff is Major William Kelly, who got a Congressional Medal of Honor for saying, people on the ground were saying, we can't get you in here, we can't get you out of here, again. I'll leave here and take it when I have your wounded. He died later in that mission with a gunshot wound to the chest, but that set the standard. You don't leave anybody on the ground ever. You don't leave your own people on the ground. That's one of the reasons I did like the crews like to fly with me, because I said, I'll never leave you on the ground. Not unless we're all down here. I said, because they get out and they move around the ship, and there were some of the pilots that had left them on the ground, had to come back and get them. I said, no, I won't do that. I had one guy tell me one time that he was so terrified he couldn't do the mission. So I found a place to set him down. We did the mission. Nothing happened. Went back and picked him up. Never said another word about it. He just had one of those moments in life when you feel like something is going to happen and you can't stop it. And the way we stopped it is we put him in that friendly village for about an hour, half an hour, less. Went back and picked him up. Never said another word about it. I told all the crew that I will do that anytime for you. If you reach that point where you are too terrified to do your job, then I'll give you an out. And I'll come back and get you. I'm not going to leave you there. So they all appreciated that.
Tom, you've lived an interesting life, my friend.
Oh, yeah. I've had a lot of weird shit. But everybody does. I've found that there's just a lot of...
It's true.
If you with what you're doing, you probably see lots of stuff like that, and it's chance. Things are really chance. I believe in chaos and evolution. I'm not religious in any way because I've just seen too much of the other stuff, and it just happens. Stuff happens, and you adapt to it. Nothing more you could do sometimes.
Yeah.
Or you can make it not happen, and that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, man.
Oh, my pleasure talking to you.
My God.
Tell if you ever want any more information.